name is Miguel Chavez. I am an adult sports coordinator. That means that I do adult sports, batting cages, and field rentals as well. So I wanted to become a coach. Was looking at football pretty much, was looking at high school sports, then kind of tailored off, went and did public administration, kind of found my niche is I like parks, I like sports, so kind of was a good fit for me. I can remember what I liked about parks and remember meeting with my friends at the parks, playing with them. Now I want to give that back, and I want kids to go enjoy our parks the same way. That's kind of why I'm always pushing to make sure the parks are safe, clean, we have the proper amenities. So now coming full circle, my kids are enjoying it. We're outdoors, kind of getting our little family niche with it, and it's super awesome.
My name is Millie Barr. I've been working here for 1.5 years in aquatics. What I like personally as a head guard is it's giving me the opportunity to not only create a safe space for patrons, but also to connect in a different way with the lifeguards. I've never been in a job where I've been able to connect with the people the way that I have before, as I have here. It's not just about, lifeguarding or first aid. I feel like it's also about
That's when his contract is up.
I don't know because it's executive session, so I don't know that we're voting
Oh, that's right.
in executive session. I think we're just discussing the.
All right, good evening. Sorry for the delay. We have a study session tonight as well as an Urban Renewal Authority meeting. And we will have the Urban Renewal Authority meeting first. But this is a hybrid meeting of the City Council. Members of the public can view this meeting live on Channel 8, on the city's website, and on YouTube. Live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 *. I will now call the study session to order, and we will recess to the URA meeting. Council will return immediately following the URA meeting, which is estimated to last until 6:30. So I'll call the URA meeting to order and ask the secretary to call roll. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Chair Douglas.
Present.
Vice Chair Noble.
Present.
Member Guardiola.
Present.
Member Teeter.
Present.
Member Sandoval.
Present.
Member Kim. Member Dukes. Member Trujillo.
Present.
Member Young.
Present.
Member Amador. Member Henson.
Present.
Member Machuga.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'll need a motion and a second to excuse members not present. Would someone like to make a motion? Councilmember Sandoval?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please. Councilmember Guardiola?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, the motion on the floor is to excuse members not present. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So thank you again. All those opposed say nay. All right, the motion passes unanimously. All right, next I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes. So do I have a first or a motion on the floor is to approve the minutes? Do I have a motion? Councilmember Young. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Young, Commissioner Guardiola. Commissioner Young is the first, Commissioner Guardiola the second.
So moved.
Second. I'll second.
Thank you. All those, the motion on the floor is to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All righty. The motion passes unanimously. All right, we're moving on now to Resolution 2026-004 to approve a contract with Bridge House. Do any board members have questions for staff? Director Rogers, could you give a brief explanation of this, please?
So the proposed contract before you today is an agreement that will allow for a nonprofit organization to provide maintenance, landscaping, and upkeep services within the Derby Urban Renewal District.
Thank you very much. I'll need a motion and a second to adopt Resolution URA 2026-004. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Teeter is the first, and a second, please. Commissioner Guardiola. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution URA 2026-004.
Thank you very much, and Commissioner Guardiola is the second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
005.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Now we're moving on to Resolution 2026-005. This is to transfer opioid settlement funds. Do any board members have questions for staff?
Yes, Board Chair, I have a question.
Thank you very much. Board Member Douglas, not Commissioner.
Thank you. Question on this opioid settlement. I raised my hand before, but you probably didn't see it. So, you know, with this here, the $40,000 opiate, is this a one-year contract or is this consecutive for up to 3 years or so?
Good evening, Chair. Looking at the agreement that we have in place, bear with me as I look for the termination date.
October 31st, 26 for the bridge. Yeah. So term of the agreement may be extended by 6 terms, but it doesn't have automatic extension, so you'd have to come back.
It is automatically to expire on October 31st, 2026. We have the ability to extend, however, that extension will require CCURA approval beyond that period in time. Thank you for the reminder by the teams that this allows for us to see how well we're able to integrate this into some of our basic practices for maintenance, upkeep, and landscaping. I was too narrow in my first identification of it just being Derby, but it's Derby as well as the Mile High Greyhound Park area as well. So.
Oh, okay. So it's, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. I need a motion and a second to adopt Resolution URA 2026-005. Board Member Young
So moved.
and Board Member Teeter?
Second the motion.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is to adopt Resolution URA 2026-005. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed say nay. Thank you. And Resolution 2026-005 passes unanimously. All right, we're moving on now to administrative business. We had discussed as a board potential regular meeting schedule. However, I learned subsequently that unless we vote on it, it doesn't become operative. So I would like to have the conversation again so that we can decide on when we're going to have the URA meetings, how frequently, and then we can have a schedule that our outside board members can rely upon. So do we have any comment about when to hold these URA board meetings? Board Member Trujillo?
Thank you. I think I recall us having a conversation around a day of the week that makes most sense for everyone. And I believe we landed on Mondays. It's been probably about a month, I think, or so since we had that conversation. So if everybody is still okay with that, then I would recommend that.
It looks like City Manager Rogers has a comment, or Director Rogers. What is your title for the URA, please?
Executive Director Rogers.
Okay, Executive Director Rogers has a comment.
Yeah. So in anticipation of this item on the agenda, so we did go back and take a look at it. There was discussion around every other month, the second Monday of the month, so that it would coincide with a study session agenda. having talked about this, I think our team would submit that you would want to do it every month on the second Monday, and that if we did not have any business to be discussed for that month, it's easier to cancel than having to then call a special meeting to have an item added to it. So we would submit as a friendly recommendation to doing it every month, and then cancel if you don't have standing business, so that it still accomplishes your initial goal.
Great. I'm in for that.
All right.
Others are?
Board Member Sandoval?
That, I was just gonna support that suggestion every month and cancel if there's no URA meeting business to address.
All right. And Board Member Teeter?
Yeah, I would hope that we would notify the board that if there's no business, so that they don't have to show up for nothing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Board Member Henson?
Thank you. Yes, I also support scheduling monthly and canceling as the case may be. I have a question and a request that URA members just be sent the Zoom link rather than being asked to register each month, so that we just have that in our inbox and we're ready to go when the meetings are scheduled. If we could do that, I say that out of experience of being late to sign up and often having to make an extra request to make sure the link gets to my inbox due to my own tardiness. So I would just ask that we get sent the link monthly or whenever meetings actually are going to take place. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that.
Chair Douglas?
Thank you. Now, what about start time? Should it be like 5:30 start time? So that's the first thing on our agenda?
So I will have to look to the city attorney to correct me if I'm wrong here, but given that you have per ordinance that our meetings for city council required to start at 6, you would have to, depending upon what is on the agenda, if it started at 5:30, would have to start recess to city council to then be recessed back to the URA. So that it gets a little muddy. We can do that. Not saying that you can't start before 6 o'clock, but that's just procedurally something to keep in mind.
Okay, because I was thinking about our legislative, we meet at 5:15 and we do the URA, because I know in years past we did that. We did the URA, we were meeting on a monthly basis. We would have it at 5:30, but we would have it at the beginning. That way, those, especially the water district and the fire district, the school district and all that could participate, but it's just a suggestion. Thank you.
I have a suggestion also, which is we discovered in the process of wanting to make this a motion is that there wasn't technically administrative business on our agendas over the past however many long time. So to include administrative business in these meetings, so that on a night when we don't have something to vote on, that we could potentially talk about, in general, what we would like to see in terms of urban renewal and get updates, ask questions, that kind of thing. What would everyone think about actually using a meeting time to have those kinds of conversations as well? Board Member Henson?
Thank you. Yes, I think that we could benefit from, maybe revisiting or getting quarterly updates on. I'm not exactly sure, and I would defer to staff on what cadence works best for them, because they have, so many items and so many agendas to administer. But yeah, I would like, it might be nice if we could have touch points of conversation and get updates on projects as they're going along when it's not just a critical decision point. I personally would find that helpful, I think. And so maybe that is something we can use, as you're saying, in the months where we don't have have resolutions to pass. But again, I would also defer to staff. Maybe that's something we just build in, even if we don't meet, say, all 12 months out of the year. Thank you.
So, I think that the value in having an admin council business, the way that city council uses it, is there could be potential scenarios where something is time sensitive that did not get on the URA's agenda, right, prior to publication, and at least affords council the URA an opportunity in the agenda to discuss it. I would strongly suggest that we don't use that admin council business as a catch-all where you're having substantive conversations about something that could then be scheduled the next month, right? Because the idea is everyone on the URA board should be aware of what you're all going to be discussing. Admin council business is really a catch-all if something time urgent comes up for you all to be able to discuss.
If I may submit, I think what we can possibly do to accommodate Ms. Hanson, I think what your general request is, it's very similar to what I do during my city manager report out where I'm wearing the beanie with the propeller on that side. I can, as the executive director, give a report out on activities and projects across our different URA districts. So you're receiving information in a monthly update that we're making progress between the milestones that then come to council, or excuse me, to the URA board. So I would submit that would be what I would recommend that we would include on the agenda is an executive director report out.
That would be great, just so we have a slot for these kinds of things, because it was like, oh no, how do we fix this? All right.
Absolutely.
I believe I saw you in the queue. Board Member Trujillo, did you change your mind? I did. All righty, thank you. All right, does anyone else have any questions? All right, so we're looking at, my motion is to schedule the Urban Renewal Authority meetings every month on the second Monday. Oh, I should ask, at the beginning of the meeting, Executive Director Rogers?
Just getting clarification from our city attorney, URA attorney, with respect to whether or not it needed to be reflected within the bylaws. It does not, because the bylaws are currently silent to it, so there's no need to have to address it there. So the motion that you are moving forward with makes absolute sense.
Okay,
So,
do I need to say like 6:03 or anything?
no, ma'am.
All righty. All right, so the motion is every month on the second Monday to hold the URA meetings. Board Member Trio?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a first and a second. The motion again, URA meetings every month on the second Monday. All those in favor say aye.
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 And all opposed say nay. All right, this motion passes unanimously as well. Thank you very much, everyone. We are now adjourning the URA meeting at 6:20, since I see no further business, and we will reconvene the council study session meeting. So thank you all for participating. Board Member Henson and Board Member Amador is now online, and Board Member Mashuka. Did you see Board Member Amador is online? Okay, good, because he wasn't here when we did.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. We did count Mr. Amador as present.
All righty, great. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to the first quarter 2026 financial report. And Teresa Wilson, our wonderful finance director, is here to give a presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Is that loud enough? Okay. Wonderful. Well, it is a pleasure to be before you tonight. I was in denial all month long that it wasn't it was April, and now I'm in denial that it's May. This year is going by very quickly. And we have prepared the first quarter financial report to present to you this evening. Let me make that a little larger. Oh. Is it Control Plus? Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's pretty, so we'll just do this. There you go.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep, and then you can scroll down.
Perfect. Wonderful. It has seemed to work really well if I just go through this report from beginning to end and highlight observances and comments, but feel free to stop me along the way if you have any questions. So for the general fund, this table summarizes revenue and expenditure activity for the entire first quarter for the months of January, February, and March. I do want to point out that for the taxes line item, this would include sales and use taxes for the months of January and February only. There's a 1 month lag in receiving sales and use tax. Business owners have until the 21st of the following month to remit sales taxes. So there's always 1 month in arrears of collection for that. So I wanted to point that out. That will always be the case for every quarter throughout the year until year end when we do the year end accrual for December. I also wanted to point out that the investment earnings, the negative revenue there is due to the reversal of unrealized gain from the year-end 25 book entry that we do for the market adjustment entry that we do at the end of the year. So that looks funny right now, but that will not always look like that as we go through the year. So I wanted to point that out. On the expenditure side, general administration, economic and community vitality, and legal, those all used to be combined under general administration. And we broke legal out as a separate office as a direct report to City Council. And then last year, City Council approved an ordinance to create the new Department of Economic and Community Vitality, which includes the functions of community relations and economic development. So I wanted to point the connection out between those three. As we go through this year, those are some changes to observe. These areas do not include the ARPA carryover yet. There is a carryover budget amendment working its way through the council approval process. So the 4.9 million that we will be carrying over to continue spending this year is not yet reflected in these numbers. They will be included in the second quarter report. Outside of that, revenues and expenditures are both trending as we would expect for the first quarter. Are there any questions about that table before I move on? Okay.
There are questions.
Yes.
Councilmember Guardiola.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could you go back to the
Yes.
expenditures? Where does our trash service come out of?
That is out of the Public Works line item,
Okay.
and that's 25 million.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pro Tem can't see my hand.
Nope. Mayor Douglas. Mayor Douglas?
Oh, sorry, I'm mute. Sorry about that. Yeah, the question came up about the trash service being under Public Works. What was the amount for the trash contract?
6.27 million.
Okay. And then out of that 6.27 million, what amount was for recycling?
I can't remember the specific breakout. What you all may recall is when the presentation with ordinance was brought forward, the originating amount was for 4.7, 4.8 approximately. And then there was the optionality of composting plus electrification of the fleet. And then there was a third option that escapes me right now. But you all ended up doing electrification of the fleet, which added an additional 1.5 and some odd million. Like I said, don't hold me to the firm numbers, but the general ballpark got you to the 6.1, 6.27. So, but in that 4.7 was was a component of the recycling, but I just can't remember that off the top of my head, sir.
Okay, no problem, because I know with the new program that was approved, our legislators, it has to do with getting 100% back of the net for recycling.
That's correct. That's about 1.2 million.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Guardiola?
Oh, wait, I'm not done yet, so hold on.
Oh, sorry.
about that.
All right.
And then it goes down to the non-spendable and the restricted and assigned. And out of that assigned 40 million, well, the 48 million, well, I'm sorry, added 110 million. That's account for the clubhouse and the substation. Is that correct?
Those funds were transferred in prior years, so that isn't impacting the current outlook here. You are correct to observe that 110.5 million is our complete ending fund balance at the moment, but when you take out our reserves, we're down to 48.16 million in unassigned. And that's after all of our financial obligations and reserves have been met. So that is available to be allocated as future decisions are made.
Okay. So the restricted 21 million and assigned 40 million.
Those are our operating and safeguard reserves, our Tabor emergency reserve, and items like that. We have notes at the bottom of this page that indicate what comes out of which reserve category.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So the assigned amount, that's for
Our operating and safeguard reserves, we have about 5 million or so that's reserved for an RHS plan, and then we have our parks, recreation, and golf equipment reserve, which is upwards of $1.5 million, and then we have a very small reserve for the employee-assisted housing program.
okay. And future slides, could you, since they're separate down the bottom as line items, could you attach dollars to them so that we could match them up?
Sure.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you. I'm done, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Guardiola?
Thank you. City Manager Rogers, are we going to get any more electric Republic trucks? Is there any plan for new ones or?
Yes, sir, there is. I don't fully know what their rollout schedule is for additional trucks that will be servicing our community, but there is an expectation that there will be more.
And will we have to pay some of that?
We are already currently paying that as part of our contract. That's part of the 6.1 is that the entire fleet comes within that option that was 1.7 thereabouts in that number range. So, and that's covered on an annual basis.
Are they going to look into the Clean Fleet Enterprise? Because that's what that fund does for the state. I used to sit on that board, and I know we funded trucks for Boulder, I think Parker. Is that an option that your staff could talk to them about it and maybe lower that? Because that's money that is guaranteed for fleets like that.
Yeah, I think there's always an option to, or I think there's always room for discussion about funding capabilities that may be able to benefit the city. I can't speak to what that might do with respect to our contract and obviously follow-on benefits, but I think there's obviously an opportunity for us to engage with Republic.
I let them, when I met with them, kind of let them know, and they kind of just put it like, okay. But I think that's a great option for us because cities and partners like that, Waste Management also got some, collaborated and partnered with it, and they got the money. The person that took my seat is a resident from Carmer City. So again, it's connected to us. So if you could just have that conversation with Republic.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And for anyone following along, this slide is actually in the financial report as opposed to the presentation, which
Correct.
was what led to my stumbling and fumbling at the beginning, is that I was trying to find it. Can we put the presentation as one document too as we go along?
Yeah, we can look at merging the two.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any other questions? All right, on this next page, the bar graph shows a general fund revenue 4-year historical comparison on an annual basis. So this graph shows for 22 through 25, which is technically still unaudited. That will change next month in June as we wrap up the audit. But you can see a historical trend there with the stacked bar chart showing the revenue sources and how they compare over time. We've also included the 26 year-to-date on there, and that will continue to tick up each quarter as the quarters go by this year to compare to the previous year. The two charts at the bottom show 2025 tax revenues on an annual basis compared to just the first quarter of 26, so that we can compare trends on how the pieces of that pie chart change over time. On the 26 year-to-date pie chart on the right, I do want to point out that audit revenue this time last year represented 5.01% of the pie. This year, as of the end of the first quarter, that represents 14.9%. We did have one significant audit payment this year in the first quarter that contributed to that increase. And I also wanted to point out that other taxes includes marijuana tax, accommodations tax, and special ownership tax are rolled together as smaller tax categories that feed into that. So off to a good start for the first quarter.
Finance Director Wilson?
Yes.
Where do impact fees, what category are impact fees
They're in a separate fund outside of the general fund, so they're not included in this report.
And do we know how much is in there?
Not off the top of my head, but I can look that up and get that answer to the city manager.
All righty, thank you.
Perfect. On the next page, this bar chart compares total sales and use tax revenue for the first quarter only. In this graph, we break it down by the 3.5% base sales tax compared to the 1% 2K portion of that, so you can see how that is changing over time. This is just a first quarter over first quarter comparison for each of the years shown in this graph. Below that, we show a bar graph that shows for the years 2022 through 2026, a first quarter comparison of sales and use tax by industry. On this graph, I do want to point out that under manufacturing, you'll notice a big spike for 26. That's where that large audit revenue payment came in. And then I also wanted to point out that the retail section includes online sales. The other section includes smaller industries like medical offices, agriculture, arts and entertainment, and educational services. So this is a really nice graph that shows how things are trending by industry over time.
Mayor Douglas, you have a question?
I'm sorry. Sorry, I lowered my hand. Sorry about that.
All righty. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. On the next page, the two pie charts shown on this page, on the left is a 2025 comparison of how things ended last year by industry. And then on the right is just the first quarter of 26, so that throughout the year, we can see how those trends compare. Again, on the graph on the right, you will notice that the manufacturing piece of the pie is quite larger than we even ended all of 25, and that is due to that one large audit payment that came in. And sales and use tax overall is up 2.5% so far this year, and that includes that one large audit payment. The bar chart below this, last year, for the first time, we started breaking down how we report on use tax. And it
Mayor
looks
Pro
like
Tem, I
Mayor
think the mayor
Douglas's
has his hand
is
up.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Douglas.
Okay, and this is for real this time. Thank you. I had a question. Thank you, Teresa. What about online sales? Where's that broken out?
On this bar graph, it is its own section by industry, so you can, well, I'm sorry, it's not its own section, but it is in retail. Online
Okay.
sales are included in this retail section. And on the bar graphs, it would be included in the retail section as well.
Okay, so we're just a little below last year at this time. Is that correct?
For sales and use tax overall, we are 2.5% ahead of where we were for the first quarter of last year, but that is inclusive of the one large audit payment that we received. Without that payment, we would actually be down.
I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Let me clarify. Retail is a little bit behind, right? Online sales.
Ever so slightly, but not very much.
Is it
Yeah, and you
26,
can see
22?
that on this graph here. It is just ever so slightly lower than it was last year for the first quarter.
All right. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, that is a correct observance. Not much. It's almost neck and neck, but not quite. Okay, I think I was on this bar graph. So last year, for the first time, we really broke down use tax. It's such a large, important category. So we began tracking building use tax separate from vehicle use tax, separate from everything else that's not vehicle or building related that we categorize as general use tax. So this bar graph really depicts those three categories and how they're changing over time. This is a first quarter comparison across all years. And if you'll recall, last year we received a really large building permit payment that caused this building use tax increase in 25. There were a couple big permits that fed into this, and those were applicable to first quarter of last year. So those are one-time payments made at the time when a permit is pulled. So that revenue can be a little volatile from year to year. So that explains that spike in first quarter of 25 that is not present in first quarter of 26. And then the last graph on this page just shows use tax in total across the years to see how that compares. And you can see that it just really depends on the year and what permits come in and what growth is happening in any given year. So this is an annual basis for 22 to 25.
I have a question.
Of course.
I think I have a question, probably more so for City Manager Rogers. We have heard over time businesses coming to us about the issue of use taxes and sometimes sales taxes. I believe that car washes, because of having to replace their equipment so frequently, that they may do, I can't remember if it was use tax or sales tax, but wanted there to be some sort of reform in our taxes that wouldn't penalize them. They felt like they were being penalized. Or other businesses who say that they choose other areas, other communities to set up in because our taxes are higher than in other communities, such as Westminster, for example. When and how do we address these in a comprehensive, cohesive fashion?
Great question, ma'am. I think first and foremost, I guess we as the city staff would have to appreciate the position and/or concerns that are being raised by a particular sector within our business community, and then and provide an analysis to the council with respect to our tax code that we have established here at the city and our collection practices, and provide you with our professional opinion as it pertains to the pros and cons of what changes would occur with respect to that particular practice. And obviously, answering the threshold question, whether that particular sector within our business community is actually being impacted any differently than other municipalities. As it pertains to your latter question around sales and use tax and what I call the total collection that we have with respect to that, because obviously, the city makes up a portion of that sales and use tax, as with other entities that are a component of it. So we have 4.5% of what is, correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa, 9.25 that is collected amongst other agencies, not to pick on the fire district, but the fire district's one who has a sales and use tax, but it also has just increased that for their additional services. Obviously, we can't impact what other participating components collect, but the straightforward answer to that would be taking that to a vote of the people, seeing if they wanted to lower the city's sales and use tax, or to sunset certain components of our sales and use tax, right? We have the 2K, which is 1%, and then we have our standardized rate of 3.5%. I think what you'll find throughout this report and or within our budget, obviously we are significantly reliant upon our sales and use tax for the basic level of service and amenities that we provide to our community. So right, there's a trickle-down effect that I would say no differently. We would provide you an analysis that would lay all of those potential facts out so that you all could have a robust debate on where and how you would want to make changes, in that case, a ballot question or not, brought forward to the vote of the people if you thought it was that important to respond to. But I would say, it always first starts with us giving you the analysis for you to opine on.
All right, thank you. And I do wish Councilmember Dukes was here tonight, because I think it was part of the discussion that came up during his small business commission or group that met for several months, met 6 months as well. But all right, I was curious, and I thank you for your thoughts.
And the only thing I would add is that the total sales tax rate for all taxing entities in Commerce City is 9.75 due to that half-cent increase by the fire department.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Great. Sorry, I want to make sure I don't skip anything. Okay. So similar to the stacked bar chart on page 2 of this report, this graph shows the same thing on the expenditure side. So for 22 through 25, it's on a total annual basis, and then we show the year-to-date 26 so that we can continue to see that tick up throughout the year as the quarters go by, broken down by the expenditure categories that we report on. So and we do have some notes and commentary here. So overall expenditures compared on a year-over-year basis from 24 to 25 increased 9.8%. A lot of that increase was due to personnel and staffing added, as well as additional things added in public safety and some of the critical investments that we've been making there. For first quarter, expenditures are trending slightly under budget so far, so we'll continue to monitor that as the quarters go by. These pie charts at the top of the page, on the left is 2025, the entire year, compared to just the first quarter of 26, so that we can gauge how those trends are changing and how those pieces of the pie change over time. And then below that is a historical comparison just for the first quarter for each year by those expenditure categories. So you can see just on a quarterly basis what those expenditures levels have looked like just for the first quarter. The largest increase in total from 25 to 26 was in contractual services. This category increased by 1.6 million or 16.9%, and that was largely due to citywide computer allocation for the Information Technology Internal Service Fund, as well as outside services general and outside services for ARPA. As you know, we've been spending down our ARPA allocation. That is something that will continue for the remainder of this year. And computer allocations go up as we invest in technology. We've done a lot with public safety, so as a result of those investments, those computer allocation costs go up to feed the Internal Service Fund to provide those technology services. Are there any questions about the general fund before I jump into the capital expenditures fund? Okay.
I don't see any.
So the table on this page provides a high-level summary for the capital expenditures fund. We'll be presenting a lot of information to you on capital in the month of July when we present the draft 5-year plan to you during a future study session. In the meantime, this is how things look for the first quarter of 2026. The Capital Expenditures Fund is a separate fund from the general fund, and it is fed by transfers from other funds, including the Conservation Trust Fund, the Impact Fees Fund, the general fund as well. So we transfer appropriate capital revenue sources into this fund as projects are approved. So just a very high level picture of what revenues and expenditures look like for this fund and how things panned out for the first quarter. So far this year, we have 1.3 million in revenues and 3.7 in expenditures. That's not anything to be alarmed about for this year, since this fund is fed by transfers. We do those transfers on a quarterly basis, but expenditures don't always follow that transfer pattern. But this is absolutely nothing to be alarmed about for this fund, but I did want to point that out. At the top of the next page, we have 2 pie charts. One shows the 25 expenditures by department for capital projects, and on the left is that picture for the first quarter. Public Works and Parks and Rec, of course, are our largest departments that are very capital heavy in nature. And then the bar chart below that shows a comparison of first quarter expenditures from one year to the next. In 25 and 26, on a first quarter basis compared to prior years, we have certainly been spending more on capital projects. We've been ramping up a lot in this area and getting projects up and running and delivered. Some of this is the Cinderella bond projects that have been unfolding, and just other items that have been approved as part of the CIP. Below this, you will see some project updates. First, for the information technology category, there's 2 large projects in that area that have been active in the first quarter. The first is the network infrastructure hardware refresh, and the second is the records management system, which is being implemented and has gone live. For Parks, Rec, and Golf, big project areas were the Buffalo Run Golf Course Clubhouse expansion and the Second Creek Farm Park. And then on the second page, Public Works is definitely our biggest heavy hitter with capital projects, and we dedicate a whole page to project updates in that area. I won't read them all to you, but they are there for reference. And then on the last page, we include some links to where you can find additional information on the city's website. And that is the presentation for tonight. Happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Are there further questions? Councilmember Ardiola.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could you go up one? Go up again? Oh, okay, go down. On the project updates, where could we find the dollar amount for each project? Is it in one of the links?
We
I-
do, we do not list the project amounts specifically in here, but we do have a CIP project dashboard that has gone live on the city's website.
Okay, that's
We can, I don't believe we included that link here, but we can add that link here in future reports so that, that link has been shared in the past and can be found on the city's website, but we can, moving forward, absolutely include that link here for
Could you
easy
go up?
reference.
Yeah, thank you. Could you go up again? I just think it's important for our residents to see the amount we're spending at each area, right? Because that's a common thing that I get is that we spend so much up north and the south. That's the debate. And I think looking at this, I was just counting how many in the core. Of course, there are different projects and different things, but just if you could send that link again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And it looks like Mayor Douglas has his hand up too, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that was my question as well on the capital project fund, not necessarily as far as parity goes, because the north is not yet built out. Another question I have has to do with impact fees. Is there a section in here that shows what the impact fees were last year that we took in? And what percentage?
Impact fees are not included in this report. The impact fee fund is a separate fund from the general fund and capital expenditures fund, which are the only two funds included in this quarterly report.
Okay.
But the capital expenditures fund includes transfers of impact fees for applicable projects. So there is a connection there, but it's just not reported as a separate fund.
All right. If we could have that just to show, since we're talking about reducing those impact fees. And then I'm trying to think on the state legislative side, did they approve the clawback of the highway user funds or minimize them?
Thank you, Mayor. Not to my knowledge, sir. We are actually, I believe, receiving the same or slightly more than what we had previously in the past.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I would like to raise a question while we're on this page about the Chambers Road widening. It says that property appraisals and acquisitions will start in Q2. The City Council had approved the traffic signals at Heartland and 117th, as well as 105th some time ago. But the City Council has not approved the Chambers Road widening project. The only item we approved was design, because that was a federal grant. So I would very much like the City Council as a whole to have a discussion about the Chambers Road widening and how it will be funded before we make any further allocations without a City Council vote. Councilmember Guardiola?
That was from the last one.
Okay, sorry. City Manager Rogers?
If there's no further questions, I just had a statement, but I don't want to overstep.
I don't see any other questions. So
I just want to take a moment to thank Teresa and her top-notch crack staff. I sent an email, and it was within my week in review. We were once again awarded by the GFOA for our outstanding, excellent budgetary practices. We were also acknowledged by the GFOA in two additional categories in the work of the distinguished, of the area of strategic goals and strategies, and newly selected our capital program. So congratulations, kudos to our finance team once again on a successful presentation of the budget, one that has been nationally recognized, and very thankful and proud to have them on our team. So just wanted to acknowledge that publicly.
Congratulations, applause all around.
Related to that, I would like to ask my team to stand. They're all four here. You're very familiar with Chris, but Val, Pam, and Caroline.
Thank you. And Councilor Teeter.
Yeah, I have a question for city manager. How many other cities were in the competition for this award?
You know, that's even outside of my knowledge base, so I have to turn to the finance director. I mean, how
Absolutely. It is
competitive is this?
It is a national award program. We apply every year. Any local government in the country can apply, and it's a great honor to be awarded that. It means that we're meeting recommended best practices by GFOA, and it's not necessarily a competition. Each organization can apply, and if you meet sufficiently all of the criteria, you get the award. It's not a limited number of awards that they make, but I would be happy to share the criteria with you. It's pretty extensive. It's like 6 pages of criteria that we have to meet in order to be awarded this award by GFOA. So it is quite an honor, but we're definitely not alone in getting this award, but it is quite an honor.
That's special. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, now we're going to move on to the 2027 budget preliminary session number 1. And I'll invite Chris Johnson, the budget manager, forward to introduce the presentation.
Thank you. My name is Christopher Johnson, and first we're going to start with an update on the long-term financial plan. So we have the Raftelis team on here right now, both Jonathan Ingram and Claire Pritchard. So they're going to go over the results from our long-term financial plan first, and then I'll conclude with the first preliminary budget projections for 2027.
And could you direct us to the appropriate attachment?
It is I believe it was number 2, the long-term financial plan update.
Is it the consultant presentation?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jonathan Ingram with Raftelis. Also with me is my colleague Claire Pritchard. It's wonderful to be with you all this evening. I don't know if you can tell, but I once was in the trenches earning distinguished budget presentation awards, and it's the primary source of my haircut. So it's definitely definitely an honor for your community. Just to frame the conversation today, I'll ask to go ahead and advance the slide in a moment here, but our goal today is really to provide you an update on the city's long-term financial plan process. So we have been working really closely with your city staff over the past several months, really beginning in fall of 2025, to develop a robust long-term financial model that you all as policymakers can use to evaluate the impact of the critical policy decisions and budget decisions that you all will be asked to make in the near term, medium term, and in the long term. Just to emphasize sort of what this presentation and this model is and what it isn't, this is not a budget presentation. So fundamentally, when you look at a long-term financial model, long-term financial plan, it is a forward-looking tool that is designed to identify structural trends in your revenues and expenditures before they become a crisis, so that you can, as a governing body, have the information you need to make strong decisions. Tonight, we will walk you through the base financial outlook for your community, the result of our analysis and our coordination with your staff over the past several months, what it means for the city's fiscal health, and some of the specific policy measures that both staff and Raftelis would recommend that you all consider as you all move into your near-term budget process. The data that's in the presentation is marked as draft, subject to change, and that's because we're not quite finished with the process. So though we have developed the financial model, our focus, we have some public engagement planned for the summer to gather some additional feedback for your all's consideration. I'll highlight that toward the end of the conversation. So in terms of the overall agenda today, just high level, just to orient you what the expectation is. We'll spend a little bit of time in a sequential order going through the base case outlook first. We'll talk through our key conclusions and what it means in the long term. We'll talk through recommended interventions and then ultimately next steps. If you all have questions, certainly we'll have the ability to answer them at the end of the presentation and answer any details you may have around assumptions, whatever level of detail you're interested in getting into. So this section for base outlook, really, it's important to distinguish what a base outlook is. So fundamentally, when we look at your revenue experience and your expenditure experience, we develop a base case to outline what would happen if the city makes no policy changes. In other words, if trends continue as they have historically continued, or as you all have historically experienced, what will that translate into in terms of revenues and expenditures? The purpose of the base outlook is not to predict the future precisely, but it is to identify the trajectory that the city is on and where structural imbalances may emerge. So think of this as a financial dashboard telling you that the road ahead may curve and to inform you of your job to decide how to steer. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Claire Pritchard, to talk through at a high level our core revenue projection assumptions and impacts and our expenditure assumptions.
Thanks, John, and good evening, everybody. So this slide is fairly busy, but I'm going to talk through each of these categories at a high level, and then we can delve in as needed. The way the projection works is that we take each of the categories in your revenue and expenditure account, similar to what the presentation you just heard was about. And then for each category, we think about what's a reasonable strategy we can use to forecast revenue or expenditures moving forwards. So for example, for sales tax, like you just saw, there's data on sales tax revenue by industry, and that's what we based our assumptions on. We looked at each of those industries, looked at the trends, the revenue by retail, by establishment, and used that to develop a industry level forecast. All of that put together, we got about 6% increase on average per year in sales tax. The big caveat with this, and also with use tax, is that they are, as I'm sure you know, very closely tied to economic conditions. So this can change a lot. If the economy is stronger than we're predicting here, you could have a lot more revenue here. But if it's flatter, you could have a lot less. And so John will talk more about that in a few minutes. Use tax, you just heard about the 3 categories of use tax. That's what we used as a basis for our forecast. We looked at vehicle use tax, building use tax, and general. And we forecast those based on historic revenue and population growth, and then also permit valuation for the building use tax. And that's about a 1% increase per year based on all of those assumptions. Other tax, that actually combines a few different categories that we separate in the model, but that's your property tax, your franchise fees, and then any other tax revenue that you're collecting. That's largely based on past history, and then for property tax, we're looking at assessed valuation trends, and also we project out your TABOR limit each year and use that as a constraint. So we end up with about a 5% increase per year in that category. Licenses and permits, that's largely projected just based on past history. We looked at the trend data there, and that's about a 4% increase per year. Charges for service, that's things like your parks and recreation fees or passport processing fees. That is, we forecast that by department. And then so for each department, we looked both at trends, but then also factored in things like population growth. And when you look at department by department, it's about a 6% increase per year. And then finally, other revenue. That's anything not in one of those categories. So that's things like intergovernmental revenue or interest income. And you can see that number is actually going down, and that's because of that interest income. So and we'll get to this in a minute, but we're projecting a overall decrease in your fund balance over this model period. And the interest income is based on how much of your fund balance you're investing. So that's where that decrease comes in. All of those together, we end up with about a 4.6% average increase in revenue per year over the course of the 10-year model projection. Looking at expenditures, so your biggest cost center is your employees, and an assumption that we had to make in this model was how quickly your employee base was going to grow. Like John said, this is a base model, so we don't want to assume any big new program areas or changes in service level, but we also know that you're growing as a community and that there's going to be likely some additional staffing need just to meet that your existing service demands with the larger population. So we're assuming a 2% authorized staffing increase per year over the course of the model. And that goes into both the salaries and benefits projections that you see there. Salaries, we're also assuming a 4% increase per position over the course of the model period, and that's based on history. Benefits, we actually separate that into healthcare benefits and then anything non-healthcare like disability insurance and retirement. And the non-healthcare benefits are based on past history of benefits per authorized position. Healthcare, we're forecasting that based on industry trends, like from the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and then assuming that your 2026 healthcare plan kind of stays constant. So the same percentage of employees participating and then contributing the same amount. Overall, it's about a 6% increase. Contract services and charges, that is both your external and internal service costs. So like if you have an external contract, and those externally we forecast that based on history by department. Internally, that's your IT fund, your fleet and facility maintenance, and that's based on conversations with staff about what your needs will be over the next 10-year period and what we should assume we're allocating per year to accommodate those needs. And so that's about 11% increase per year when you put all those things together. And then finally, other expenditures is anything that doesn't fall into one of those categories. That's things like utilities or, small capital outlay that's not in your capital fund. And that's just based on past history. It's about a 2% increase per year. Debt service and capital transfers. So debt service, that is just your existing debt service. We're not assuming any new debt. So that's just what you already agreed to pay out every year. General fund capital transfers. So that line may look a little odd. Historically, you've transferred out a few $1 million per year for capital projects. As part of this, we looked at your capital plan. We looked at revenue sources to fund your capital projects. We looked at, expected investment needs over that full 10-year period past when your plan will be. And we also looked at your capital fund balance, which is pretty generous. It's about $140 million, I believe. Based on all of those things, we think that you could fund at least the maintenance aspect of your capital plan over this 10 years without the need for transfers from the general fund. And when I say, when I say maintenance, I mean projects related to your existing infrastructure rather than building new infrastructure. So that's why it's $0 after 2026 there. All of that together, you end up with about a 6.8% increase on average in expenditures over this 10-year period. Okay, I'm going to show you the kind of the forecast results based on all of those assumptions in just a minute, but briefly some definitions. You'll hear the term deficit, and that's when expenditures exceed revenues. And so it's not related to your fund balance. You can still have a healthy fund balance and be in deficit. And being in a deficit does not mean that you are out of money. It just means that you spent more than you made in a given year. Minimum fund balance. So there's kind of two buckets of your fund balance. The first is this minimum fund balance, and that's the money that your city policy says that you have to have in there and that it can't be spent except under extraordinary circumstances. And that's 23% of expenditures. Anything above that is your unassigned fund balance, and that's what's available for you to spend. And you can spend it on, whatever you choose, but best practice is to use that for one-time purchases rather than ongoing expenditures. That said, here is what our forecast looks like under this base scenario, like John said, without any kind of major changes or policy interventions. And revenues are higher than expenditures for the first few years, but we are projecting that expenditures are going to grow more quickly. And so based on everything we've just talked about, we end up with a deficit starting in 2031. And then here is what would happen to your fund balance under that scenario as you kind of dipped into it to meet that gap every year. And we predicted that would start to go down and then be depleted by 2035, again, with no policy intervention whatsoever. I'll turn it back over to John to talk about what all this means.
Okay, thank you, Claire. So the section that we'll touch on next really synthesize, what the data means in plain terms. So you don't necessarily have to be a math genius to know that if your revenue is growing at 4.6% and your expenditures are growing at 6.8%, there's a structural challenge that needs to be resolved. Ultimately, what I want to highlight here in terms of the findings is the process that we applied, which included really rigorous data-driven process as well as extensive leadership and interviews to understand your operating environment, understanding what future conditions we need to take into account, looking at your historical trends, and developing a detailed model that we will ultimately hand over to your staff to use in future years. Fundamentally, these conclusions are really an indicator that you all can use as policymakers to start to figure out which levers you want to start to exercise to change that trajectory that we've outlined. Next slide, please. So the first thing that I'd like to highlight is really around your base outlook findings. So actually, if you would go back to the previous slide, please. So there are 4 core findings. So, as we mentioned, as Claire mentioned, we're expecting annual deficits beginning in about 2031. This is really the headline. So you all have approximately 5 years based on the base case to take action before the structural gap becomes an operating reality. Okay. Now, in other words, now is the time to start to make adjustments to change that trajectory. Revenue growth is moderating from your historic trends. So, your high growth years driven by construction and commercial activity in Commerce City are tapering. Based on our analysis, we see sales tax growth assumptions of about 6% to reflect a more realistic but modest trajectory than the city has experienced in its highest growth years. Your city manager also indicated, and your finance director, sales tax is obviously your primary source of revenue, that plus use tax. There's also a lot of volatility, and we'll talk a little bit about the sensitivity analysis that we built into the model, particularly as it relates to revenue in a moment. Claire has mentioned this, but we've assumed that staffing levels are starting to stabilize. So, the city is no longer in a rapid build-out phase. So our assumption being FTE growth will be at about 2% annually, but some of those contract services expenses will continue to grow as well. Lastly, your policy intervention can meaningfully change the trajectory. So I want to emphasize you're not in crisis, but the time is now to start to make some decisions around how to bend that pathway. The deficit is not inevitable. It's the result of trends, and those trends can be changed. The next few slides kind of show you a few levers and give you an understanding of how changing conditions can ultimately impact your outlook as well. Next slide, please. So fundamentally, in addition to the base case, we've also designed the long-term financial plan and the model associated with it to include sensitivity analysis. So we have the ability, and your staff will have the ability, to project different scenarios. We'll start with a scenario that we've developed relative to sales and use tax. So as I mentioned, the base case is a single projection, but the real world is uncertain, right? And sales and use tax can be particularly volatile and difficult to project. So we've developed essentially 2 scenarios to give you an indication of how different trends may impact. So under a constrained scenario, we've assumed about a 4% increase per year in sales and use tax. That would translate from lower economic growth, perhaps slower consumer spending or a commercial downturn. Under a constrained scenario, the annual deficit would get here much quicker. So instead of 2031, you would experience that deficit in 2029, which is 2 years earlier than the base case. Conversely, you may have a higher growth scenario here where you have robust commercial developments or strong consumer activity. In that case, the deficit may be delayed to 2035 if you experience, say, 8% increase, for example, on the revenue side. So, the key takeaway here, though, is that even in an optimistic scenario with your major revenue sources, the deficit arrives within the planning horizon, which to us is about 10 years. So the question is not whether Commerce City needs to act, but when. And acting now really gives you all the most options with the lowest cost of adjustment going forward. Next slide, please. So what would happen just in terms of a marginal impact of some additional revenue sources? So this is, again, sort of a what if question. So if the city identified an additional $5 million in revenue, either through a new fee, a tax adjustment, or some other mechanism, how would that move the needle long term? And the answer is it delays the annual deficit by 1 year. So that $5 million impact in revenue delays the deficit from about 2031 to 2032. So really what this demonstrates is that the structural gap is not necessarily a problem a single revenue action can solve on its own. $5 million is a significant amount of money, but it really only buys you 1 year. And this really underscores the importance of developing a cadre of solutions to help you all address and bend the trajectory. Conversely, next slide, please. On the same token, we can look at a marginal impact analysis of $5 million in additional expenditures. So really, this is a mirror of the previous slide. So, if the city incurs $5 million in additional ongoing expenditures, so maybe a new program or a service expansion or a cost increase that's unanticipated, which in this, inflationary environment is not news, right? The deficit then moves forward to 2029, again, 2 years earlier than the base case. So this is really that expenditure side equivalent. So to illustrate to you, that those modest decisions in either direction have compounding effects over that 10-year horizon. The practical message for council is really that every decision about new spending or new programs really needs to be evaluated against this context. And the model that we've developed and that your staff had the foresight to initiate is really a tool that you all can use to inform that conversation in a meaningful way. Next slide, please. So as we look at the overall projection, the focus really is on policy intervention. So what can you all do? As we evaluated, your operations, we evaluated your revenue and expenditure profile. We really see, 3 primary categories of policy intervention that I'll hit kind of the high notes on, and then turn it over to staff to dive into some detail. The first is really around revenue diversification, specifically related to Tabor and debrucing, which is a very funny term, and debrucing your revenue source. So obviously your revenue base is heavily concentrated in sales and use tax, over about 70% of your total general fund revenues. The best practice is to achieve a more balanced structure and more diversification in terms of your revenue. Tabor-related mechanisms provide a near-term opportunity to capture revenue that the city is currently leaving on the table. Kind of the second policy intervention relates to your cost recovery philosophy. So the city currently provides certain services, most notably residential trash collection, without charging users directly, even though the cost of those services is substantial and growing. There's an opportunity to potentially establish service fees aligned to cost of service, which, especially in the solid waste industry, is a common practice. And then there's, expenditure stabilization. So we're really reviewing the pace of staff and contract growth to align with your current service level expectations going forward. With that, I'll turn it over to the city to talk through the specifics of some of these alternatives.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Claire. We really appreciate that. And please feel free to jump in with questions, as always, during our presentations. We want this to be a good dialogue with council. So we took all of this information and had a lot of great internal conversations about what can we do? What can we do now and start thinking about now in order to delay or prevent that structural imbalance that is being shown in the 10-year planning horizon. We definitely need to have some thoughtful and tough conversations now and not wait 4 years until we're there and have to make severe expenditure cuts to present a balanced budget. So it's definitely the time to start talking about these policy interventions now. So some things that staff would like to discuss and propose in order to keep the city on a solid path of long-term fiscal health. We as staff are proposing 3 big steps. The first is placing a measure on this November's ballot asking for voter approval to retain the city's Tabor excess property tax revenue. We'll talk more about that on the next 2 slides. We'd like to establish a waste refuse services fee to help offset the escalating costs for providing residential trash removal services currently provided for free. And we'll provide a little bit more information on that tonight, and then even more detailed information on that in a couple months. And then finally, we would like to seek to improve the city's tax equilibrium between sales and use and property taxes by implementing a reasonable mill levy increase in a future year. So first, to discuss the first step that we are recommending, the city is exempt from Tabor's revenue growth restrictions with the exception of property tax. The city's full mill levy is 3.28. However, the city has not been able to assess its full mill levy since 2019. We perform a Tabor calculation each year following the cost of living and local growth assumptions dictated by Tabor, and use the results of this calculation to set the city's certified mill levy. In order to comply with Tabor, the city has applied temporary mill levy credits each year beginning in 2020, and those are shown in the table on this slide. Due to this practice, the city has lost over $4.5 million in property tax revenue over the past 5 years and is currently losing close to $1.4 million per year. The city's full mill levy is the second lowest in Adams County. Only Federal Heights is lower. The impact of Tabor on the city's already low mill levy creates a double dampening effect on our property tax revenue. And staff recommends placing a measure on this November's ballot to seek voter approval to remove the revenue growth restriction from the city's property tax, effective for property taxes paid in 2027. The impact of this to a city homeowner would be an increase of $67 per 100,000 in home valuation. I used 100,000 in this comparison to make the math easy because everyone's home is worth a different value. And the impact to the city would be an additional $1.4 million in property tax revenue, and that amount would be expected to grow each year moving forward. This funding can be used to meet increasing and ongoing needs in public safety, community well-being, public works, and the list goes on. To touch upon the trash service fee, staff will bring a much more detailed information to City Council during a study session in July, but we wanted to take the opportunity tonight with all of the finance discussion to touch upon this topic. Commerce City is one of only 2 cities in the entire state that does not charge for residential trash removal. The city paid $4.3 million in 2025 for residential trash removal and currently has $5.2 million budgeted for this service area in 26. Staff recommends implementing a reasonable monthly service fee for residential trash removal to begin offsetting these escalating costs in a fee-for-service fashion, much like all but one of our peers in the state. Additional information and options will be presented to council in a couple months, and I would just encourage you all to be thinking about this and be open-minded. There'll be a variety of options to choose from. It doesn't have to start with full cost recovery. We can ease into it, but more to come on this in a couple months in July. This slide summarizes fees residents are paying for trash removal services in Adams County, Aurora, Thornton, Fort Collins, and Denver for comparison. Should council decide to support the implementation of a reasonable fee for a service here in Commerce City, there would be flexibility to implement one of multiple options available. So stay tuned for more in July. And then finally, this revenue source comparison graph shows how reliant Commerce City and surrounding local governments are on sales and use tax versus property tax and other general fund revenues. As has been mentioned multiple times this evening, Commerce City is heavily reliant on sales and use tax, more so than our surrounding peers. You can see that Commerce City has 72% sales and use tax compared to our peers that are anywhere from 50 to 64%. The previous two items we've discussed relating to Tabor excess property tax revenue and establishing a fee for residential trash removal will both help improve this equilibrium. In addition to these two measures, staff recommend consideration of a future ballot measure to implement a reasonable mill levy increase. These items will not only help improve this equilibrium and lessen our reliance on sales and use tax, but will also help promote the city's long-term fiscal health and delay structural imbalance concerns shown in the long-term financial plan.
If I may, and I would say this, and probably Claire and Jonathan would agree. The city's at a position that is not uncommon for municipalities like ourselves that are rapidly growing. Once again, if you think about back in 2010, we were only around 35,000 people. Sitting today, we're at 75,000. So, right, we've grown exponentially in the course of just the last 16 years. So in that, where we find ourselves is in that juxtaposition of the city can be anything within a legally reasonable position, but we can't always be everything. And what we have attempted to do for the last 16 plus years has been everything and anything to everyone. And some of the biggest ticket items that you find that are within our expenditures has been in response to that growth of our staff, and being able to provide that level of service that's been anticipated, that's been an expectation by our community to meet their aims and desires, while also the continuation of practices that far exceed my time and others here on council, as far as the provision of trash as an example. But we're getting to a point in time where, right, Colorado is, and what you've seen by our growth and why we've had strong sales and use tax, but you've also seen its volatility over the course of the last couple years of very stark decreases in 23, 24, and slightly starting to come up in 25. Colorado philosophically is a growth and development state from how it's structured itself. If you don't grow, if you don't transition your growth and development, both commercial and residential, you're going to see that volatility. We have experienced that, and that has impacted our trend line to an extent. So when you look at the holistic picture before you, Jonathan and Claire's good work, there are very hard decisions that have to be made in today that will guide what we do going forward into the future. Some of those will not be easy. There will probably be some awkward decisions that have to be made for the greater good of being able to provide a comprehensive set of services and amenities to our community. But you now will have certain tools and discussions available to you and or potential practices that you can make available. I would say outside of step one, I would say step 2 and 3 still require some level of engagement, education, and information with our community to be able to understand the public interest and for them to understand the impact that it can have in being able to continue certain practices and or opportunities. The retention of the existing mill that we've talked about, that we've always, I don't want to use the scarlet letter or scarlet word of DeBruce, but to retain that 0.55 that we currently reduce down, goes a little bit, but doesn't go the entirety. I share all of that is that you all have, some practical conversations that are before you in your assessment of what the city looks like. How do we do that and how do we manage that? And then how do we communicate those expectations and the ability to accomplish those? Maybe not to, drive in a Cadillac, but there's nothing wrong with driving a Chevrolet, to use an analogy. because it still gets you from point A to point B, and it still gets you there safely, and it still gets you there in a timely fashion that you want to be able to do so. So I set that table for you all, that there'll be more forthcoming conversations around that, particularly trash services, some of these other potential steps, 2 and 3. But if there's an interest and a consideration to put it to the vote of the people, at least for step 1, that's guidance and direction that we would need in order for us to do that work. Now, once again, it's up to the voters. It's not up to council, it's not up to staff, it's up to the voters whether or not that is something that they agree upon to do or not. But we would need your direction to take that formative step to put that out there for their information. But I wanted to at least provide that. And Jonathan or Claire, if I've said anything that you want to opine on, by all means, please do so, similarly to Teresa.
All right, I have a comment. First of all, I am extremely happy that we actually have a financial forecast. This has been something that I have wanted for a very long time, because otherwise, what's the context for our decisions when it comes to making expenditures and budgets? Are we making decisions in a vacuum without knowing what our long-term future looks like? So to be hitting a deficit in 2031 is something that I, as a 6-year, 7-month city council member, is finding out for the first time tonight. I just want to give you all context for that. I agree that there are going to be difficult decisions to make. I also think that there are 6 council members on this city council who are all residents of Ward 4, and of those 6, 5 live in Reunion and pay those mills. So that's going to be really challenging. And at this point, all 3 suggestions are for higher taxes. The Tabor excess property tax revenue, that will be an increase. The service fee for waste refuse, that would be a tax. And the tax equilibrium would also be a tax. So that's what we're looking at, are 3 options that all involve taxes for residents. I would like the city to also take a look at the staff recommendations that were made by the consultants to staff equilibrium, and that staffing suggestions that come through to us when we are asked to do it in bulk, if you will, that we understand what the benefit is of adding this staff. How does it translate into making a difference for the community? I think would be especially critical. And the other thing I would like to see for the refuse is, what would it look like if only new homes paid the full amount, so that the other homes were legacy? So if you provide that as an option as well. Councilmember Teeter.
I was curious who the other trash service was, or the other city that had trash service.
Sorry, the city attorney and I were having a conversation. I do have to qualify something. The refuse is not a tax, it is a fee that we would collect. So it would not be, because then there's concern. So to the latter question, there would be concerns about not treating everyone equitably and fair with respect to applying a fee that would only hit a certain percentage of our population. Once again, that's different than trying to provide a public benefit to those that have certain limiting criteria, but for just applying a new fee to new homes, there would have to be some evaluation on the potential fair and equitability aspect of that. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Refuse is a fee, not a tax. Your question again, sir?
Okay, you said Commerce City was one of 2 cities.
Yes, sir.
Who's the other city?
Greenwood Village.
Okay.
And they only provide it for single-family detached. Right now, we provide it for single-family detached, attached, and multifamily.
Okay, so if we put on a $10 fee for every resident per can, then what would that raise our revenue to?
We did some very high level estimation. We need to do some more work to present options, but roughly around $3 million a year, depending on what we charged. We were thinking $10 to $20 a month. And we'd have to discount that to offset the administration cost of collecting those payments. We don't have an infrastructure currently in place for billing, and we would need to offset the cost of that. And so there would be a net revenue collected estimated currently around $3 million a year.
Thank you.
Mayor Douglas?
Yes, thank you. This is, I appreciate this point in the presentation. You said something about trash service. I know we would have to be collected where we, that goes through our water district or whatever. And then now, are we talking about this trash service being that the fact that we would still contract a single source, our trash service through like Republic or Waste Management, so that we still have the same type of service?
So, I mean, those are all very good questions that I think we would dive into philosophically and policy-wise with you all later on this year. I think you heard from the finance director in July timeframe. Currently we have a 5-year contract, so this 5-year contract will carry us through 2030. Understand that, right? We have appropriated 5.3, but once again, we are looking at that recycling offset of that additional million. So if you think about it, we're really sitting at 6.1, 6.2. That will escalate as we add more homes. So while you're sitting at 6.2 today, when you're on the outside of that contract, you're probably going to be somewhere closer to 9 to 10 million. So I raise that with once again, we're being everything and anything to our community and providing that without actually having something to offset that outside of the high potentiality around our sales and use tax. So I think that's a conversation and a question that we want to have really in great detail around that with you all, knowing that it's not something that you just roll out at the end of the year. It's something that you build towards and something that you have to really engage with the community and to ask some of those hard questions. Like I said, not everyone is created equally because of certain conditions in which that they have to navigate within their lives, and how do you build programs to support that still be able to get you to some offset. I say all of that long-winded to say this in short, is that there are a number of different options on how we can approach it and when to do so. I think it's where that conversation in July will be able to better advise you all, not just on the potential fee we would collect, but also the timing and discussions and the setting of the stage, both with our vendor, future vendors, and or with our community.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a hard one there, because we asked our citizens to approve the 1% sales tax, so that 1% that goes into perpetuity, it doesn't end. Most cities that ask for that have put a sunset on there, and we didn't do that. Rightfully so. We collect a lot of money. And so we, and then giving back. I mean, if you buy a car, you pay the 1% sales tax, and cars aren't cheap. So yeah, that's a hard one there. And then as far as raising up the property tax, I see that dead on arrival. So we got to think of something different. And then that just comes into play is we just also had analysis done by consultants not too long ago that says that our home builders, every home that's built, we lose money. we have to provide services, where most cities get it from property tax, but the way, a majority of the growth is happening in the north, and it's just so lopsided. We have mills 213, 216. There's no end in sight, and that's not every community. That's just certain ones. But going forward, there has to be parity with that. So if we're going to ask for our citizens to pay more, I know that was talked about 40% reduction in impact fees. Well, to me, residential coming in, they're going to build anyway. Why should they have a break? The break should go to retail, the areas that we need to fulfill those different slots and services and amenities we need. Those where the breaks should go. But as far as residential, there shouldn't be a break on residential, because they're going to be the ones who end up costing us the most. And that we've had consultants tell us that. So we need to take what we have been told to do and not do. Those are very uncomfortable conversations, but the growth, if the causation is there, the ones who are causing this should have to pay. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I know this isn't it, but yeah, those three are. I could see the debrucing, because we're already asking for that. It's not someone asking for more than what it is. I can see that passing, but the other two, well, the other one as far as property tax, and then the fee, we really have to think about that too. Of what should we ask? Is it half? Maybe people should pay half of this, half the cost. That might be consideration, but not ask for the whole thing. And then maybe a tiered situation where, hey, these first 5 years you're gonna be paying this amount, and then it's gonna tier up, until you get to that amount. So we have to work backwards on that, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Thank you for doing this work and putting this presentation together and enlightening all of us with, just the trajectory of where we're going up at this point. As far as questions, can you tell me, did you provide, and I may have missed this in all the midst of all the information, if we were to, let's say for instance, take all three options, implement them, what that would do in terms of the deficit? Did I see what the effects would be long-term for all three?
We did look at the first two. The first two would be, between 4.5 and 5 million a year. So if you think about that marginal impact analysis and the 5 million figure that was used, that changes the trajectory, by about a year. So when it comes to balancing the budget, there's three main ways to do that. One is revenue enhancements, two is expenditure cuts, and three would be a combination of the two. When it comes to balancing the budget, you always have to balance to the revenue projections. You can't just make up revenue to balance to the expenditures. So those are the three key methods to balance the budget. And these three options that we're presenting tonight for consideration are the three that will actually make a difference. You can talk about other revenue enhancements. We could talk about, parks and rec fees and other things, but those are much smaller scale, and they're not going to make a big enough drop in the bucket to really help with that structural imbalance projected in 2031. So when we talked internally, these are the ideas that are big enough to actually make an impact and help. And I know it's not a fun conversation to have about increasing taxes, but it's at least something that needs to be talked about and considered. Whether it's actually implemented or not, time will tell. But all of the other revenue enhancements outside of this are really so small scale that they're not going to make a very big difference from one year to the next. And outside of doing big things like this, it's going to be talking about expenditure cuts to balance the budget in a future year.
Well, and that's a key point, because that's something I don't see here as a strategy as cuts. Because these are increases for revenue, and that's essentially a cut to households. And that's increase in fees, and when things are already on the rise, that's a big concern. But I think we also need to look at cuts as well, because I think, City Manager, you also stated we can't be all things to all people. We can't continue to do all things. And there's some things that we've taken on that other municipalities don't necessarily take on. Some of them are county services. So we do have to look at cuts, and not just these strategies, but even the small drops in the bucket as well, because they all amount to bigger things in the grand scheme of it. So I think we have to also look beyond just these strategies, because that is going to be a hard conversation, and a hard one to pass, especially when we're talking increase in taxes for the northern part of our city, who's already struggling, and a lot of it has to do with like the high metro district fees. It just doesn't help us in the situation.
And please understand, I think we're open to any and all obvious conversations. It's easier to talk about, it's easier, and this may sound weird, it's easier to talk about increasing revenue sources as opposed to changing expectation levels for those who have been receiving, or that that have received most recently, or will receive certain amenities and level of services that they have become accustomed to, right? And that's just hard in general as a human being to say, you know what, I know you've received X for 15, 20 years, or you've had this cost at X facility. Well, the landscape, the environment, the ability to provide in year one versus year that we're in today does not benefit one another, does not align, does not intersect. So we have to be looking at it holistically, not just by adding revenues, but also thinking about, well, the number of services that have required us to increase our staff, to increase our work rate. We'll get to a place where it's not sustainable without having to add more staff or contractors to keep that work rate. And is that work rate realistic in the grand scheme of things from a fiscal health responsibility perspective? So the comment that was made about our staffing, I actually agree with where Jonathan has taken the approach about our staffing growth, right? We are operating in 2019 with 139 less people to try to accomplish the things that we're doing today. And today, I would say we are keeping our heads above the waves as it pertains to the level of service and the expectations that are being driven by the community. I don't knock them for that. That is what they're here for. But the reality of that is that if that level of expectation continues to rise, we see what that impact is. And once again, residents are afforded, and I respect them for that. But at that same time, we have to balance on what gets the job done versus what they would love to have in a utopian outcome. I'm a resident myself. I have certain expectations, but I also have to understand we can only go so far without breaking the entire system. This is where those trends come into play, and the conversations that Jonathan's had and will be providing us to really dig into. You're saying, of course, not just today, but for other councils that will come after you, on what and how you're setting those policy parameters and how you're thinking about that level of service and how the city, as staff and myself and others, communicate that out to our community to where they may not agree, they will at least appreciate and understand it, both increasing or decreasing.
Councilmember Teeter.
Yeah, I would just think, we got a study session coming up to where we need to we're gonna be given 5 choices on whether to keep gas and oil wells or whether to sell them or whatever. But, I mean, there's some royalties there for the people in the north if we would just allow them to drill, and that we're depriving those people of. And I would like to know what kind of how much money that we're looking at per resident.
Yeah,
It's a great question. Yeah, as you mentioned, we do have an executive session that's scheduled in an upcoming meeting for council to discuss what your legal options are, as well as I think you'll have an opportunity to get that information that you were just asking for. There certainly is an opportunity for this council to have a larger oil and gas conversation in a public forum. I think in large part that will come out organically by way of the executive session and council's direction to your staff. So I would suggest we wait until after that conversation to see, where how that transpires.
Thank you.
All right. It's also something, as I think Mayor Douglas mentioned, impact fees. We also have the $40 million or so substation, the flock package. We have the county funds for the Fuel Impact Enterprise Fund of $6.4 million a year, of which they have collected most of it since 2024, when the first $6.4 million, that came in 2025, and the second was in 2025, so they have now theoretically collected 19.4. There's all sorts of different ways that we can be looking at it, but as I said earlier, when we're making decisions in a vacuum, that's where it's difficult. It's important. It's absolutely critical that we have this information, that we understand what the situation is. I do agree with Councilmember Sandoval that looking at where cuts can be made also is also beneficial, because even though I called the refuse fee a tax, I meant it in terms of how the public will regard it, that they will see it as money coming out of their pockets, out of their monthly budgets. And it's just one more thing that's being added on. And all 3 of these are going to cost the taxpayers of Commerce City. So it is concerning, but I'm glad we're having the conversation. And thank you for all the information, and thank you to the Raftellus folks for getting us here. Does anyone else have any comments? Nope. All righty. Thank you very much. That ends the conversation then on the 2027 budget preliminary session, correct? Or do you have more for this, Christopher?
I believe Jonathan had 2 additional slides that he wanted to go through.
All righty.
Jonathan, if you want to hit those rather quickly, sir.
I will absolutely do that. Preceding slide, please. So really, this is really the final slide. We have some supplemental information, but that you're welcome to access at your own leisure. But I did want to highlight we have a couple of that we're not quite done yet. So one of the key elements that your city manager, your finance director outlined for this process was to make sure that we're getting in front of the public to one, share our findings and share the findings relative to your all's financial condition, but to also gather their feedback so as to inform your decision-making process going forward. So we're in the process of organizing two public engagement events in a very engaging style. So not necessarily standing at a podium and communicating, but where our project team will be on site to share key findings and gather feedback on what's important to the community relevant to these decisions that you all are making. So we have those scheduled for the first week of July. Once that's wrapped, we'll summarize the findings and then ultimately produce those final deliverables. So we are pretty close to the end of the process, but really moving into that public engagement portion to help with your decision making. So that's really the highlights. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you all, and I appreciate your thoughtful questions. If other questions bubble up over the coming weeks, feel free to pass them through your finance director, your city manager, and we'll be sure to respond.
I see a question from Councilmember Guardiola.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a reason only 2? I think 2 is not enough, especially with this stuff that's coming out and maybe going to the voters and the community. I think we have to educate our community, and even this presentation, I think, I don't believe that some of these recommendations, whichever ones we choose, are dead. I think some folks will understand where our city's going, the forecasting, but it takes a level of education. And with 2, is just, and then it's in July, right? Summertime. A lot of our folks leave. I know the Hispanic community leaves during summer months. And also, are they going to be in Spanish too? I just think we need to do our job in educating our community with these huge changes, right? But what I learned today, I look at just the 3 recommendations you've given us, and it gives me a sight. It's like, okay, we have to do something like this because look where we're going if we don't. So
great question, and I want to separate the 3 recommendations from the long-term financial plan. So what we're talking about as far as the public engagement sessions are just on the data, on the trends, getting feedback on that, not the recommendations themselves. Like I said, I think on step 2 and 3, those are long-term public engagement opportunities as you look at the dates that we outlined, 2028, 2029, from now to then, for at least the latter 2, let's start having that conversation with the community about educating, understanding that feeds off of this information, right? So nothing's imminent with that. Now, with the number 1, I can't take any action, and I can't make any movement on developing a ballot question unless the majority of the council gives me consensus or gives me a decision to go do so. And that's a short runway for timing, putting it on the 2026 election calendar. And in that, there's even some campaign limitations that you can do when you have a ballot question that we can't engage on. Does it happen this year? Does it happen next year, so that you have the opportunity to educate and have that conversation around mill levy retention versus, or for lack of better words, debrucing? I think that's a conversation that I need to have with you all again, if that's something that you all really want us to explore. But that has to come rather quick, like I said, because we got a very short runway. And even in that, we're going to be living on the campaigning and or the communication to our community. So which one takes precedent? Seeing where it comes down on vote, or the communication with our community? I think that will guide when and how we actually put that out for ballot consideration. But for this effort, we will detach those 3 conversations from it, so that we're not confusing the community. We're just giving them something foundationally to understand, to build on, to get feedback as to what their priorities are, so that as we continue to come back to you on 1, 2, and 3, you'll have some context on that.
No, and I agree with you, Jason. Didn't mean it like that. I just think this is going to set the foundation of which direction the community is going to want us to go, right? I really do believe that this is going to set the foundation of where we're going to go for whatever recommendations y'all bring to us, but having 2 town halls or engagements, I just think that's not enough, because this is going to set the foundation that's going to keep us going forward. And what I don't want is when we do get those recommendations and they're going to say, well, where's the long-term plan? Well, there's 2 in July. Sorry, you missed them, right? So I think we could get creative also. FAQ websites, social media posts. We could definitely think outside the box on how we engage. So those are just my thoughts of this. This is going to set the foundation of whatever recommendations you guys bring us that we're going to refer back to and be like, well, this is where we're going. We asked for engagement. So, yeah, thanks.
Councilmember Sandoval.
This isn't a question or anything like that. This is more so a statement. So this is obviously a sensitive conversation, no matter which way you approach it. It's an important one to have. Tough decisions will have to be made. What I want all of us to consider, us as council members, is that when we engage, that we are engaging the information that is at hand without interjecting additional commentary, without interjecting personal opinion or what may have happened, what may not have happened, because at this point we have to address where we're at and where we're going, not where anything's been, anything like that, or how we got to this point. This is where we're at, and how do we come up with a solution? Because we need to be able to address our community and provide the education. Black and white, simple, and I want to make sure that we approach it on a sensitive subject and not try to interject our own personal opinion on how we got here.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just to kind of piggyback off of Councilwoman Sandoval, I do also think it's important for us to make sure that we're not blending a lot of issues together and that we're sticking to what we're looking at here. We're talking about impact fees. We're talking about all of these other things. And this is just a preliminary, proactive way, right, of getting in front of what direction we are heading in. And so I just want to thank the city staff for presenting all of this information, because this does allow us to really come together and think about how we will address this in the future. I also want to point out and be very clear, there was something mentioned around these 3 options, raising taxes. And I think we've addressed each one of them individually, but I just want to go back and make sure that folks understand that that's not the case here. And I just want to make that known. So thank you all again. Looking forward to future conversations around some of the decisions that we will have to make, so that way we are placing the city hopefully in a very similar position that we are in now in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Rogers, Mayor Huseman was in office at the time when we last had a similar vote. And one of the things that was noticed at the time was the window of information was smaller than we probably needed in order to have a winning vote on it. And I just want to echo Councilmember Guardiola's comments, is that the more time, the better. And because the deficit window opens in 2031, that I can see timing these out over various years as opposed to simultaneously as well. So maybe some sort of timetable or schedule that we could look at, because if it gets thrown on the ballot, like say August or September.
So in the presentation, we did lay out for 1, 2, and 3 sequentially to some extent that the mill levy retention, the debruising, would be a consideration that we've asked for 2026 ballot. The trash or waste refuse fee would be something that we would implement in 2028. The the tax equilibrium would be a consideration in the 29 to 30 ballot consideration. So once again, we're not going to just come out and, just lay it on the table and say, boom, got all 3, handle it. We're actually trying to be mindful about the impact that this would have community-wide, but also, once again, giving enough time for more of the sensitive topics, trash being one of them, as well as any equilibrium improvement between your sales and your property tax, the longer runway, to be able to have that very defined conversation with our community, all aspects, all walks of our community, to be able to come back with some very robust understanding and information, quite frankly, what I would call public interest analysis back to the council before saying, you know what we've heard from the community, they're willing to go up to X dollar amount for trash and then see some accelerated rate after that because it'll give time to get comfortable with it. Or they're willing to go to X rate of property tax because they will see the benefit that comes not just because of their property, but because of hopefully the commercial and economic investment dynamic that we hope to see between now and 2030, right? So it's all relative how they then stitch together and how that communication and how the truth testing in the actual built environment then backs it. Because then maybe people are willing to pay for it, myself included, if I know that I've got not just myself, but I've got the retail, the manufacturing, the industrial, all of that on the hook with me to keep that level of service, to keep that expectation that I want to be able to have for my family and those who come to visit in our city. So that's where that longer runway is what we were contemplating for step 2 and step 3. The Councilmember Teeter's position. There's some other potential revenue sources out there that we'll discuss that could also help buoy. As you think about cuts, like I said, this is just not one step, but it's multiple, it's multifaceted and multi-layered that we will be able to create those intersections to create confidence in our community around that. The thing that you bring up, and it's appropriate, is the NIGID ballot, where I think it's apples and oranges to this one, because we were talking about $250 million worth of public improvements, but we couldn't call out what those public improvements were and how that was going to directly benefit our community, right? This is really talking about a mill levy that we already collect, that I don't want to say waive, but that we reduce to a level that we have not done since, what, 2019? Mm-hmm. So it's not as though that we're talking about something that we've done for 20 plus years. It's that we've done it in the last 7, and it's not benefiting us, and we can still communicate that to the council. I'm not the council, but the community. But that window for us to do that in this year is limited versus if you all want it for consideration next year, that gives a longer period of time. But that's the guidance and direction I need from the majority of the body on what to do around that.
I very much appreciate that, and that's critical information Thank you, that it would be rolled out over a period of time. That's great. And in addition to Councilmember Teeter's comment about a revenue source, I do hope you consider mine as well. Councilmember Trujillo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So what I hear from you, City Manager Rogers, is that you all are providing us with several options to think about for potential strategies for a potential deficit. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Which makes it even more important, right, for us to really prioritize economic development and really diversifying our tax base. And so there are several pieces to this puzzle here that we have input in. And this is just one small portion of that. So again, just want to thank you all again for highlighting this for council and for our community as well. And really just look forward to collaborating together to really address what could potentially happen.
Councilmember Young.
I really appreciate all the work that you have done and all the work of our consultants and staff. I've been just listening really thoughtfully to my fellow council members' thoughts and what they're thinking. And what I've really come to is that what you've presented today is, let's say, a worst case scenario. And that it is important for us to really proactively be discussing and deciding. As a city, I'm sure we're not the first and only city who's being faced with some of these kind of long-term projections and looking at ways that we need to be thinking about how to kind of overcome that gap that could happen. And so I guess I just want to say that I appreciate the preliminary discussion that we're all having and getting all of our thoughts and all of our ideas out on the table. I appreciate that we have some runway, that we don't need to make any knee-jerk reactions or responses out in the public, that we're really trying to scale some of our responses. So I do think that as a city council, we can be thoughtful and respectful and have some really healthy and really hard conversations about what our next steps are going to be. But what I'm hearing is the staff has put a great deal of work into really considering a lot of the options, and I'm sure that there will be some future presentations regarding maybe where we might have to consider cutting expenditures as well. That's just the reality of budgets, right? Like you said, there's a couple different ways to do it, and we'll have to find the combinations. So I really just wanted to say thank you, and I trust us as a city council, and I trust our staff to really thoughtfully approach our public about this as well. So thank you.
Mayor Douglas.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there's some good things said, and I understand about, make sure that our message is heard throughout the community, throughout the city. And when we did this 1% sales tax, it was an 18-month campaign. And that was with the businesses and all as well. So yeah, we do need that length of time for that groundwork to make things happen and put things positive. And then when we talk about this, it's just not talk about these three things, it's also, how did we get here? We gotta let our citizens know, how the city was, how the growth started and where we're gonna be at in the future. And all those things matter. So you gotta tell the story. You have to be honest and upfront and transparent and get people to understand so they can really think critically how that's gonna impact them. And yes, we're not asking for a lot, but it's how you ask, where you could get a yes, or how you present the information and get a no. So But I do appreciate what you guys have shown us is great. We could talk about this for a long time. I mean, I saw that just to highlight, I mean, just not to highlight, but just to focus on, we had 20 positions that were added in 2025 at $4,488,300 equated to about $225,000 per position. And then in 2010, there was, in 2025, there was 10 positions added. So, you know, all those things add up. And yes, we are a growing city, but we also need to show, you know, hey, we put these folks in this position and this is the outcome because this is what's needed. But this is only a start and it's great information. So I really appreciate everything everyone has done so far. And then as City Manager Rogers had said about Gatsby, when it comes to our audit, the city and getting that award, and that's tremendous. I really appreciate Teresa and your team for, you know, making that happen. You know, it's the fact that you let them in and make sure the questions they had, that they were answered, and that was full disclosure and transparency. So I really appreciate everything you guys have done. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, I just keep hearing deficit, and I'm looking to Jonathan to confirm what I'm about to say or not. The city is not in a deficit, correct?
That's correct. Projecting a deficit in 2034.
Okay. So I just want to be clear that whoever's listening, that we're not currently in a bad place or a bad situation that requires immediate action, but it's wise for us to be thinking about actions going forward to protect their services as best as possible. So I just want to make sure that we're all hearing the same thing. We're not currently in a deficit. Thank you, sir.
Correct. Thank you for putting that slide up again. Councilmember Trujillo?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for that. That's very, very needed, that clarification. You know, and I also just want to highlight that we are so fortunate to be in the position that we are in now, and even in 2031, okay? There are other cities that are going to be in a much worse position than we are, potentially, in 2031. And so, you know, there are cities that are cutting $20 million from their budget for next year. And so, again, just want to thank you all so much for being in the position that we are in and for being very thoughtful and bringing this forward to us so that way we can collectively strategize, so that way we are going to stay in a good position. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher, whose turn is it now?
I'm so sorry. We have more numbers to go over. So I just want to apologize in advance and try not to make you fall asleep here. But we've kind of hit 3 stages of the finance process here. Like Teresa was up here presenting on our quarter one, our current year performance, and then we intentionally put the 10-year outlook up before our 2027, so we can kind of see the 10-year spread before we kind of focus in, narrow down on just 2027. So as you were saying, not to make that decision in a vacuum, seeing what we have there and then kind of see how that spreads out over time. I'll try to go quick through this stuff. We're going to have a quick economic outlook, just hearing what we're seeing from the state and the national economy. We'll quick review of our general fund balance, and then we'll talk about revenues, expenditures, how those put together, and we'll take a look at what our surplus projects for 2027. And then at the end, we'll kind of touch on budget priorities and the budget survey you guys filled out in March and talk a little bit about that. Looking at the economic outlook, all these numbers are from the Office of State Planning and Budgeting of Colorado in their economic outlook released earlier this year. The constant in here has been that there's growth, but the growth has kind of slowed throughout the nation. We're kind of buoyed by consumer spending more than investment nationwide, and the unemployment rate has ticked up a little bit. In Colorado, we've been growing a little bit better than the nation is so far, and then looking at relatively a slower inflation of 2.6 in 2026, and since March 2025, the CPI throughout the metro area has been 4.2. But one of these things I wanted to point out is that Commerce City doesn't always align apple to apples with the state and national economy, so it's not always easy to just take these numbers and just move it over to what we're projecting. Taking a look at the 2025 ending fund balance, we ended with 116, and then as the mayor was asking about earlier, we have our different reserves. The purple color is our non-spendable, and then we have a restricted tabor and 2K, and then our operating safeguard and other reserves take us down to the 54.3 unaudited unassigned fund balance at year end 25. We expected to use some of that to balance the budget, as well as a couple of ordinances that have either been improved or scheduled to come forward. We're looking at around 49.3 unassigned in the general fund, and then our 2K restricted, we used a little bit of that to balance the budget, so we're looking at 12.6. As we look at that throughout the years, it shows that our unassigned fund balance is in a pretty healthy place. We've floated right around that 50 million mark since 2023 to now, and that was even with using some of that to transfer out to fund the police substation as well as other capital projects. And as we shift over to our operating revenues, this chart should look pretty familiar. It's pulled right off the quarterly financial report, except it's got the 26 budget as well as our 27 initial projection added onto that. 27's a big year. You can see it's actually lower than what we projected for 25. Part of that was 27's the first year we will not have ARPA dollars in our general fund revenues, as well as in 2025 we had a rather large market adjustment, as Teresa spoke to earlier, that we can't rely on year over year. In that 158, we're baking in growth in sales and use tax that we'll go over a little bit more, as well as some nominal growth in things like fines and forfeitures and licenses and permits. Sales tax, as we've spoken out several times, we've rely heavily on sales tax. You can see it's kind of been pretty consistent growth throughout the years, stepping up. Our 25 amounts actually exceeded our 26 budget. So in 27, we projected a 3% year over year, so a 6% total initial projection on our 25, over our 25 numbers, I should say. Looking at use tax, this should also look pretty familiar. We have our 3 types broken out throughout the years, as well as our 26 budget. You can see the use tax numbers jump up and down a little bit more than sales tax, as it's, depends heavily on investment. So, but after talking to our economic development and our community development teams, we feel confident that we are still at least hold relatively flat from our 25 numbers. We actually might see an increase in building use tax, and then maybe a small decrease in general use tax, as there were some high dollar one-time investments in 25 numbers. Throughout both those years, we will be monitoring as our current year revenues come in. We can always make adjustments as we see our current numbers. As we jump over to the expenditure side, our expenditures in the general fund are driven mostly by what we call our base budgets, the department budgets for all city departments. We as a budget staff do what we call the base budget process, where every couple of years we do a detailed analysis where we go line by line, looking at every line and trying to right-size that budget. 27 was a detailed year, so my staff has been working since the beginning of the year to nail down projections, and then we met with every department to go over those and make sure that they are working for both us and them. The goal of these is current level of service, kind of like Jonathan was talking about in the long-term financial plan. We're not changing anything. We're trying to just fund what is already happening, and any new things would go into our decision package or our enhancement process. Just a reminder, our expenditure categories, we have salaries, benefits, and contract services, which all wrap up into our personnel, and then services and charges, which go to vendors, materials and supplies, which can be everything from Post-it notes to SWAT gear for the public safety department, and then capital outlay. In the general fund specifically, most of the capital outlays included in the Parks and Recs department, but then some other IT is also a big owner of capital outlay. Looking through the budgets, this shows our 2027 proposed so far base budget along with the 2026 adopted budget. In the general fund overall, we increased 7.5%. If you look at the internal service funds on the bottom, those divisions or those departments are all wrapped up in the cost of the departments above. So like the IT gets charged out to every single department. So when I'm going through these departments one by one, you're going to hear me say allocations a lot. If I say a technology allocation, that means they're paying more to IT because they've increased their technology components within their budget. Some of those I wanted to point out in there. Community well-being has a 24.5% increase. Most of that is due to the fact that ARPA dollars were covering a good portion of the CWB staff's salaries, but in 2027 that will no longer be possible as those funds run out. And then city clerk took on our postage and mailing duties, so that increase is mostly due to that. Taking a look at our administration base budget, supports 37 FTEs. Generally, legislative would also be included in this, but we pulled that out to look at by itself at the end. We're seeing a 5.8 increase there. Most of these are salaries, benefits, and then there were some increases in service charges that were mostly allocations as well. Our brand new department, Economic Community Vitality. The increase here is mostly due to an FTE that for the Economic and Community Vitality Director that, as it wasn't a department last year, lived within city manager's office. It moved over here, and that, as it is not a very big department, it drove a lot of the increases there, as well as some service and charges for facility fees and computer allocation. Legal base budget has remained relatively flat, 3.3, due almost entirely to salary and benefits. It's 9 FTEs there. Human resources base budget, this one has a little bit of increase. You'll see the benefits has a 24.6. That's not the benefits per employee. That's for citywide benefits, including things like workers' comp and unemployment or life insurance and things of that nature that are wrapped up there. We've been slowly but surely moving all those into their department as that reflects our citywide human resource costs. Finance, my department, it's a 6.1 increase. That's mostly due to salaries and benefits as well as computer allocation charges. We have a new ACFR and budget book software that is going to be put in soon. Community development supports 55 FTEs. They've also been relatively flat this year. Salaries, benefits, of course, and then some facility charges as they moved over to the new building, or to Adams Tower. Public safety is our largest department and our biggest increase. Like a lot of that is salaries and benefits as we comply with the new FOP contract, contract services. They have a lot of things like AdCom where they pay for our 911 calls, which we're under contract, so we see increases in that year on year, as well as some contract services and materials and supplies that we'll get into a little bit more later. Public Works, this is just the admin, engineering, parks maintenance, and street maintenance team. The trash contract is included in these numbers, and they had a 7.4 increase. A lot of that is due to salaries and benefits as well. Parks and Rec had a 5.8 increase over that, with salaries and benefits allocations leading the charge on most of that. And then some of our internal service funds, facility services, had a 7.7 increase. We've seen a rise into repairs of certain buildings that have gotten a little older, and as even the new rec centers are starting to hit useful life of certain equipment, so we've seen some increases there. And then our fleet management budget, if you recall the end of the 26 budget process, we used $5 million of fleet fund balance to fund some of our CIP things as the retained earnings in fleet had risen over the area that was needed. So the 23.3 drop is really due to that. And then kind of cutting into that a little bit, we've seen some materials and supplies increases. Price of fuel has gone up, if you haven't noticed. And then depreciation has gone up as we've switched from a leasing model back to a purchase model. And as year over year those start to increase, our depreciation ticks up with that. Information technology, this has been a big driver of our allocation models. You can see in the capital outlay, it's up 23% year on year as we fund new technology items, and as items come up for replacements, they seem to always have increases in their costs, and then some salary and benefit increases on top of that. And finally, the legislative base budget that supports you all, very nominal increase of 6.2% due to some allocation charges as well as a small increase in materials and supplies. Salary and benefits were actually perfectly flat there. When we wrap that all together, you can see our operating expenditures have climbed year over year. We sit around an average about, in these years, it's been around 10%, so there has been some increases. A lot of that, as you see from those bar charts, is the salaries, the purchase services and charges, whereas, you know, the debt fund transfer that we have to make every year is relatively stable. Actually went down a little bit this year with some of the refinancing that we've done there. Those all pull together in what we call our source and use, where we show the initial projected surplus or deficit. We have our $158 million in revenues, our $138.9 in department, as well as there is one debt service that lives within the general fund, and then our required transfers to elected officials' debt and a small capital allocation for 2K leaves us with 152 total expenditures and looking at a 6.9 surplus for the 2027 proposed year so far. This next slide touches on the work we've started at the beginning of the year in March in the budget priority survey. You guys were asked to highlight certain areas that were of importance to you, and we wanted to go through these and pull out what is currently in both the 26 and 27 proposed budgets that touch on these areas. Like you can see for safety, not only the police increase we talked about earlier, there's the police substation that's, at least for now, is $38 million, as well as IT to support that. In retail, in our economic development budget, we have a retail consultancy support that is supposed to go out for bid soon, as well as recruitment events that are both in this and next year's budget. For Derby and CIP, we have a couple of projects for lighting and flat work, as well as a 72nd and Monaco intersection that are budgeted. And then our TIF revenue supports our Derby outside services. So there's a lot of things that go into this. This supports the Catalyst program. If there was a PUD that would be done this, any studies in the area would be supported by this. And then I know the economic development team is looking into if we can use the TIF funds to support the farmers market if that were to happen. Redevelopment in our URA admin, we always budget some amount this year, and next year it's right now proposed at $100,000 to look for additional redevelopment opportunities. This could be trying to find different URAs that would allow for URA or for TIF financing, whether sales tax or property tax, to help the redevelopment process along with some of the work that ED is doing. Workforce development, there's a workforce advisory committee that they're looking to get started. There's $10,000 budgeted for that, as well as a workforce development program. And then they have a Lightcast platform technology item that helps them keep up-to-date tabs on the labor markets. Life safety equipment for public safety. This is all the supplies and they need from vests and anything of that nature. We have an 8% increase on our 26 so far proposed in 2027. And then for roads, we have our pavement management, street reconstruction, and core city infrastructure, all part of the CIP 1A preventative maintenance that we have budgeted for both 26 and 27. And then primary employment, we have our Common City Delivers marketing campaign that is budgeted to take off soon. We wanted to highlight these areas as responding to what your guys' priorities were identified in that council survey, and just to get your thoughts on it. This is the initial phase. This is just the beginning of the budget process. We move into what we call our enhancement, our decision package phase next. So this is what we currently have allocated to meet those expectations of those priority areas. Right now, there is no plans to pursue any enhancements of those, but this is your opportunity to look over what we have and speak if you would like to see any additions or anything within those areas to meet those expectations.
Thank you. Does anyone have comment on any of these? I actually have a couple of questions.
Yes.
The workforce development program for 100,000, what is that exactly?
So, workforce development program is currently supporting the Career Hub and continued engagement with our various partners in the private sector that may be able to assist us with attracting, or not necessarily attracting, but to further develop individuals within our city to being able to take on jobs and opportunities for jobs, both here in the city, but also regionally. So trying to effectively improve upon the workforce.
Do we work closely with Adams County Workforce Development and Business Services?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. And regarding primary employment, I remember distinctly Councilmember Madera correcting me and saying, primary employment is industrial. Does that mean that the marketing campaign is designed to attract more industrial to Commerce City as opposed to, say, retail?
Well, the Commerce City Delivers campaign is looking at diversifying our job base. So in short, yes. Retail market attraction, which is under the recruitment efforts, is very different than the development of our primary employment, which is in essence where a lot of our sales and use tax and what keeps the lights on at the end of the day on comes for Commerce City. So, and when we think about industrial, I like us to be thinking about it in the evolution of what industrial has become. It is aerospace, it is bio life sciences, as they call it, emerging tech, green manufacturing. So it's a melting pot of a number of different classifications within the big umbrella of industrial that we are going to go after. And as what we've identified in our economic development strategic plan under industries of interest for us to be.
Thank you very much. Okay, no one has any other questions.
I believe the mayor does.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mayor. I knew you did. I had seen you earlier, and I was just about to skip over you. I'm so sorry. That's your fault for being in a little box on my screen. Mayor Douglas.
No problem. No problem, Mayor, Madam Chair. Yes, I just want to thank the Finance Department for bringing this again earlier in the process of the year. I know I've asked for that to happen a couple of years ago, and you guys have stepped up. And this is great information for, especially for the new council, to understand this process because it is a lot. So I just want to show my appreciation on that. You know, I'm going to hold out here on the payment management, but I'm going to ask one question about payment management. For the $5,100,000, how many lane miles? I mean, I know we didn't do lane miles, but just contract-wise, what does that cover, the $5.1 million?
I can't give you that answer today, Mayor.
Okay. Well, you'd have to give me today, but just put it out there. If it's, you know, it ends up being that it was 10 miles or whatever, would be good to know, because so far, the last couple of years I've seen, well, actually every year, who's ever's contract has done a wonderful job, but this go around, not so much. So I don't know if we have a contingency, not a contingency, but a clause in there if they have to come back and redo something that they do. But just because I hear about it a lot. So, and I know next year it's going to go down $300,000, but just something to that I'm watching. So, but like I said, thank you very much for the finance department bringing this earlier on the budgeting calendar. So thanks again.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So, you know, just to kind of bring it full circle back to my colleague, Mr. Johnson, who always does a wonderful job in presenting this information, particularly around this slide. How does this feel to the council? Because once again, you know, my team's gonna, you know, start digging in and really building out the budget. And this is a formative question in how we approach it, right? Because this is our base budget. This is where we build from the foundation. And even when we look internally, budget enhancements may fall into, from even our own departments, into some of these categories. So I asked this question because last year we went through the process of, you know, seeking 5 additional projects or asking about 5 additional projects from the council. Now, that was not in lockstep with what we did this year, which is we came to you, budget orientation or planning retreat, and said, what are your priorities? Give it to us early so that we can see where we've already identified what we think might be able to accomplish what we heard across that 2 days already through our own work, and just, you know, matriculation from year to year, just with what we're seeing on level of service requests, on the roads that we want to be able to address, but also being fiscally minded around our revolving revenue sources, right? Roadway projects, which you're going to hear in July, which are one time, like your substation, your Bison Grill, your Monaco Park, your Eagle Point Rec Center, all of those are one time, and those are to some extent acceptable to be able to pull from your unassigned general fund balance, because it's not going to get drained out every single year like salaries or other operating expenses under the general fund that we can't continue to rely on something that's static and really dependent upon the volatility around consumer use and or you know, additional things that come on. So this, we think, you know, we've come into 2027 hearing what council wanted on March 13th and 14th and building a base budget that we think can get us there. You've already started to see some of that work with Derby, and I know I've shared an email with you all about, right, you got to get through that work before we can actually see the actual improvement in the ground. So once again, if there's something that doesn't feel right, and say, you know what, Jason, you know, we'd like to see a little bit more in primary play. My team and I would then go back and identify what does that look like as an outcome, and what's the cost associated with that outcome. So not looking for the granularity of go build me X, Y, Z. It's more about, I'd love to understand if you had a little bit more cash or funds in this, what would you be able to do? And bring that back. But that's what I'm looking for right now from you all, so I can give our finance team that guidance and direction to carry forward until the next time they come back before you.
Okay, I have two council members in the queue. Councilmember Young?
Well, I really appreciate that question and like a new thoughtful lens to kind of approach what we're seeing here tonight. The first thing I want to say is just based on the report that we just received and some of our projections that a really important aspect of our budget is the money coming in from new businesses and primary employment. And that primary employment is really important for us as a city because those are employers that are here, but that's also products or services that are being made and being sent out, and so we're receiving more revenue from that. So that's a really important thing for our economic development team to be going after and putting some focus and effort into in the marketing campaign that they presented. And kind of secondarily to that is our workforce development and our partnership with Community College of Aurora and the work that they're doing, that they want to do at the small business. And so that investment and those efforts to, and you know, I'm a big fan, I'm passionate about keeping our young people coming back into our community to reinvest, to grow their families here. That just helps grow our economy in the future as well. When I look at this list of 8 items, I see that this really mirrors the hot topics or the primary goals that we talked about in our retreat. Public safety is less of a want and more of a need. This is an absolute essential in our community to have a safe community. I see investment here that's also reinvestment into our economic development that is really important for future growth and future for future budget and projections. I'm losing words, it's getting very late. And of course, our infrastructure and our roads. I see a list here that's really indicative of the hard conversations that we had at our retreat. So I think you did a really good job kind of balancing some of those needs and wants and suggestions from City Council.
Councilmember Teeter.
Yeah, here last month, myself and Councilmember Young attended a ribbon cutting. I can't remember the name of the business, but they made metal studs, and but I remember talking to the management out there, and they said they were just so happy to get out of California because they were over-regulated, and they were so happy to be in Commerce City because we was working with them, and we have so many brownfield sites in Commerce City that are now clean, and we can now start development on there. I'm thinking we need to focus on places like California because there's a lot more people that's wanting to leave there just because of their regulations, and letting these people know, hey, we got land and we want to work with you because there's a lot of places out there. But I think we need to do some more marketing and bring some people in. I know the last big business we brought in was Cementos out on 96, and we went all the way to Juarez, Mexico to bring those guys in. But that's $1 million revenue annually. That's. Yeah, I know it's an ugly big brick building, but it's not. It doesn't look ugly to me. It looks like money. But anyway, that's all I got to say.
Councilmember Guardiola.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think this looks good, looking even at the priorities from our summary. I think you guys nailed it. What I'm excited about is how these will translate into the other themes that we worked on, right? And that's getting into the weeds and all that. So no, this looks fine. I think you guys really did a good job of getting what we talked about and summarizing that. and putting it into this. So I'm excited about getting into the weeds when you guys bring and hit all those different priorities that we also talked about. So no, good job.
Anyone else? Thank you. Yeah, I have comments on it. It would be police officers who can respond to what is, what the various high-tech stuff calls out for them. So more police officers potentially. I do support the retail and Derby. And then looking down at roads, the reconstruction versus pavement management, what's the difference between those two?
Yes, ma'am. So I would say I'm trying to think about the most simplest way of being able to define this. So you've got asphalt, and that asphalt may have a curb, may not have a curb, may have a sidewalk, may not have a sidewalk, curb gutter, all that jazz. There's what's called a mill and overlay, where you're simply just taking the top layer of asphalt, you're milling it, and then you are then laying new asphalt over on top, mill and overlay. That is going to be most of your pavement management. That may also then be also your street crack repair when you're not having to do an entire stretch or corridor. So that's what we perform on an annual basis versus a road reconstruction project is going to be like Old Mill Road, which is where we're going to take it down to the studs. We're going to lay a bottom lift of asphalt, top lift of asphalt. We're going to redo the sidewalks or curb and gutter. We may not expand the road, but we're reconstructing what was there to be more durable and to have a greater life expectancy. So that's the difference between a true road reconstruction project versus a mill and overlay, top lift asphalt, and I hate to use the word topical in nature, but it's to be able to extend the existing life, maybe 5, 7 years, max 10, whereas your roadway reconstruction will carry it beyond that.
I think then, in that case, I have many people who have spoken to me about this, and they can't recall the last time there was a mill and overlay in their area, say 10 years, 13 years, 15 years that they have lived in Ward 4. And so if we do this every 5 to 7 years, is there a schedule so that you're able to keep track of what was last done and what needs to be next? Because I hear it a lot, and they do see us as council members as being responsible somehow for the roads, and I can understand why it's not clear to them that we're not, but it's a challenge, and I would love to see more money go into that, if at all possible, in order to have a more demonstrable impact than we've had in those areas.
So we do mill and overlay, which is pavement management, every year. So that's done every year. So within that pavement management, right, there is the concrete flat work. That is the mill and overlay. Are the two big components to that.
Yeah, I think I'm looking, though, for the schedule for the exact roads, like, are you going to do
Yes.
some street between blank and blank, and then, but to see it over the course of, say, 5 to 7 years, so that we know that all of Commerce City will have been addressed by the time we get to the 7th year. All of Commerce City, not just my ward.
Well, yes. Once again, I don't know if we'll get to all of the lane miles that we have in Commerce City, because we have thousands, and when I say thousands, I mean thousands of lane miles that we have to cover, both from your local streets to your collectors to your arterials. So when we think about the mill and overlay in those top few inches, right, we're extending the life of that existing roadway section. But we're also looking at the PCI condition, the pavement condition index of our roadways, and determining the ones that are in good condition, fair condition, going to bad condition. It's just how they have it in the industry, and addressing those. What we're trying to do is be more predictive in addressing the good streets so that we don't get down to the fair, and that then allows us to spread the money more wisely across roadways than what we've been trying to do is to catch up, to get them back into that good condition. We give that list every year to the council that we work with our contractor with when we're approving the contract with that vendor. So for the last 7 years, since my time that we've been here, we've given the council every single street that we're doing. Now, have we looked at how many lane miles that is? Don't ask me. I can ask my team. We may not. But we do keep a list of the roads that then tick off, and then we start to look at the other section of the roads and how much we can cover in that. And that's the back and forth that we go through with our vendors year in and year out, once again, trying to extend it as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that you don't give us 8 roads every year, but it is a question of what are the addresses? And as you point out, there's thousands of lane miles. So how do we manage to keep up with it? I'm just suggesting what I'd like to see more money go to. You ask us, and that's what I'm providing. Councilmember Teeter?
Yeah, I just want to express my appreciation for you guys recognizing the road up at Mill Road and 56th Avenue. Those particular roads, I mean, you're looking at the trucks that go in and out of there, at the flour mills, they're all going out of there at 40 ton. I mean, they're heavy trucks. And the trucks that go into the refinery and pick up fuel, those are heavy trucks that go through there where, you get on the other side of town over by UPS and those trucks are half the weight of what we're looking at. And you get out to FedEx, those trucks are half the weight. But it makes a difference. I mean, having a road that's built for heavy trucks, and those roads need to be built for heavy trucks if you want them to last. And that's why they look like, that's why they're in the shape they're in right now, is because, in my opinion, they weren't built for the heavy trucks. They were just built like a normal road, and you see what happens to them after just a few years. But anyway, I appreciate you catching that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Nope. Oh, sorry, Mayor. I did it again. Mayor Douglas.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason, you had mentioned Old Mill Road. Now, is Arlen Mills, now they're going to do a portion of that as well, right?
I can't remember the incentive agreement off the top of my head, Mayor. There may be some participation. I think Old Mill Road's one of those funky roads just because of the interplay we have with it coming off of 85-6. So where does the city's authority begin versus where does CDOT's authority begin and end? And, we've identified that as part of our CIP program, and I think overall development. I know it's something that we've talked about with the business community, that we'd love cost infrastructure participation in that. Mm-hmm. But I can't remember the particular details.
Okay. And looking at my old notes, I think lane miles that we have, that the city, as far as snow removal and all that, I think it's between 280 and 300 lane miles. That's a lot. That's a big chore. I do agree with these 8 items that were identified for the priority budget. I think we get back to basics. That helps a lot. So No, I appreciate all the hard work everybody's done. Thank you.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for presenting this to us, and it is my recollection, and these are great. And also, thank you very much for entertaining some additional questions around roads this evening. Thanks.
Go Avs, yeah. Yeah, just quickly, just showing that this is the beginning of the process here. We'll be back in the middle of July to go over the CIP program and let you guys have some input there. And then we're moving into enhancement season now. And then we'll be back to talk general fund budget and all the other fund budgets in August leading up to the council budget workshop, which is scheduled for September 14th. And that's where we make final decisions before bringing back the completed budget at the opening of the public hearing in October. So thank you for you guys' time. I know that was a lot of finance stuff, so. Yeah. You're welcome.
No further questions. Teresa, are you sitting there because you have something else? I can't be sure. All right, now we're moving to reports. And man, we are on time. 9 o'clock is called, it's 9:01.
I will do my best to get us through my side quickly. You all receive, well, you and the rest of the community, but I think it's worth noting again, just want to introduce the city's new sidewalk repair program. That is the 50-50 cost share that allows the city to cover half of the cost, making code required repairs more affordable and easier to complete for residents. The application window is now open through June 30th. We have 100,000. Funding is limited. So come on, submit. We're asking for it. We want to help. Like I said, we are going to continue to keep pushing that information out to our community. But once again, this is something that was a council priority last year that we budgeted for this year. This will be a continuing effort that we have. So we'd like for our community to make use of it. Like to, just acknowledge that we have shifted into phase 2 of our Highway 2 median project that is between 104th to I-76, heading northbound. Obviously, phase 1, which was between 96 and 104th, is substantively complete. So appreciate the community's patience, continued patience as we continue to look at improving the safety along that corridor. 2 Fridays ago, we had the groundbreaking for the clubhouse. If anybody drives by there, fencing is up, demo work is starting. So that's a beautiful thing. And then with PD, I think it's just a great opportunity for us to engage. We had what was a drunk and distracted driving awareness event at Adams City High School with the students over there. If you don't know, that's pulling out the beer goggles, per se, and seeing how you can respond as you walk and as you have to simulate. It's a great experience if you've never done it, just to kind of understand the impacts. And I think just for our PD to help educate around best practices, even if you're distracted, and if not, once again, under that other impairment, just to understand the distraction that comes and having our PD work with our youth on that. Very proud of that aspect. Friday night, they held their badge and honor ceremony. That is typically where they go through and they highlight a number of different officers. I'd like to give a shout out to our professional employee of the year, Jeff Nix, our accreditation manager, as well as our officer of the year, Mr. Gilbert Abdullah. I know there was a handful of council members that were in attendance for that, so thank you very much for your participation. And just so that you're aware, this week is Police Week. So if you happen to see an officer out there, just say thank you. This is really a week to try to acknowledge, what we asked them to do, on our benefit for public safety and general welfare. So just wanted to highlight that to the council. This week is Police Week, and to any one of our residents, understand, right? We are asking quite a bit for these individuals to stand up for us in a number of different aspects. And with that, concludes my review.
Very much, City Manager Rogers. And we now have City Attorney Zarzeki.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have one item for council's consideration this evening, which is a reminder that you all have the municipal judge's annual evaluation scheduled for next Monday. I did send you all an email just a moment ago, just to put it back at the top of your inbox, which is the email that you all received from the HR director, Carlton, last week. I think there is some discussion that needs to transpire right now as far as the practicalities of who's going to provide the municipal judge his summary prior to the evaluation. If you recall last year, we had discussed that there was a need to make sure that he gets that prior to walking into the evaluation with you all. So that's one item. And then the other item is a decision from council on who will basically acquire all of the evaluation templates from each of you and consolidate those. I did speak with Councilmember Guardiola as a committee member from the evaluation committee. I believe he is willing to do that. I certainly don't want to speak for him, but the way that would work practically is you all would fill out the template that you have in your inbox. That is the grading template. You would send it to one member on council. He would consolidate and then have one consolidated form that would be shared as the annual evaluation for your municipal judge.
Okay. If I do it in queue order, I need to skip to Councilor Guardiola, okay? Yeah. So that he can respond to this? Is that what you wanted to do? Councilor Guardiola?
Yeah, no, if you guys could send me your evaluations individually, and then I think the best recommendation is we send that to HR, and HR sends it to the judge, if that's okay with all y'all.
I think that's perfectly fine. There's some gray area here on how these forms get provided to your three employers, but I think the most important thing is that everyone has a clear understanding of who's sending it prior to Monday, so that there's no confusion of did your employer get the template? Did he also get the evaluation, the 360 summary? So what I can do is I can certainly reach out to the HR director tomorrow, clarify that council member, if council's amenable to this, that Councilmember Guardiola will consolidate, we'll send it to the HR director, and he will provide it to the municipal judge as well as the summary of the 360 evaluation.
I think the biggest other question is, when could we get them all if you haven't done them yet? So it gives enough time for HR to send them to the judge, and the judge gets to review them before Monday. Would Wednesday evening do? We can do that. And that way Thursday morning, city attorney, I'll send them to HR. That way it gives them.
Perfect.
Is that cool?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember, is it awkward sending from HR when HR isn't in charge of the judge? We are?
We kind of discussed that's the best practice right now. I guess HR gives it to our city attorney and the city.
Yes, so great question. And that question was posed by Councilmember Guardiola. So the 360 surveys are conducted through HR currently for all of your employees that have them. Certainly there's, if that's something that we would like to change, I think you could use the evaluation committee as the driver for that change. So the HR director has the evaluation summary. As far as the consolidated template, that has come through the HR director for me. I was directed by this council to consolidate for the city manager. So there's not one bright line rule. If council would prefer that it comes from me, that's also perfectly fine. It is up to all of you. I just want to make sure that nothing's falling through the cracks and that everyone's getting what they need prior to the meeting.
Yep. Ignore me.
Okay.
I won't disrupt the process. Sorry.
And I think if,
stick with that.
if other council members have some recommendations, that we could bring it back to the evaluation, see what works best.
Yeah, in the future. Councilmember Trujillo?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to let you all know, obviously, Councilmember Young and I will be out on Monday for that evaluation, so we'll be sure to get our material submitted by Wednesday. I had the privilege of attending the Badge and Honor ceremony on Friday with council members Young and Teeter, and do just want to give the men and women of the Commerce City Police Department a huge shout out for all of the work that they do in keeping our community safe. I know we have on our schedule the Denver Metro Economic Development Tour for this Friday. And unfortunately, I have had several things placed on my calendar for the 15th now. And with me being out next week for ICSC, I started reaching out to some other council members, and it seems like there are several who will not be able to attend on the 15th. So I would like to propose that we move that, reschedule it for maybe sometime in late June or in July. Because I think it's important for us to all be there and represent the city. And I know that the conversations that I have had with others, they are all in agreement on that. So not sure how you all want to proceed, if we need to do a vote or.
I think if I get a head nod from the six of you and or the mayor with a thumbs up, I think that gives me enough guidance to look at. I see 1, I see 2, 3, I see 4, I see 5 with the mayor. I'm good. We will look at late June, early July, and we will connect with both Westminster and Parker. Thank you all.
More emphasis on early July?
I think we can swing it that way.
Was that all you had, City Attorney Zarzaki?
It is, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Trujillo, did you have any more?
No, I don't. I jumped my time. I apologize.
I don't think our mics are working. Councilmember Young.
Yes, so if we're on to city council updates, I have a few. Anyway, I want to thank our extraordinary economic development department for really putting a lot of extra effort. Yeah, we're talking about Keith. Putting a lot of extra effort into the ICSC next week, and I'm really looking forward to it. But more than that, I feel a little extra prepared as a representative of City Council to approach some of these appointments and meetings in a way that's helpful for economic development and supportive of our city resources. So thank you, Keith. I appreciate all the extra work. I was also able to attend the Badge and Honor, and I know this, but I was just extra struck by our police officers, these people who go through this training, who show up every day to work, who put on extra armor and extra gear, who put themselves in the line of fire. And they do it to protect us, and they do it to protect our city and our citizens. And again, like, I know this intellectually, but to hear how our officers go above and beyond the call of duty every single day, it's really inspiring. And So I would just say hug an officer, but maybe ask permission first because, we don't want to freak people out. But I also want to say that I think our investment in public safety, it demonstrates to our police officers that we value them and we value the work that they do for us to keep us safe. They don't know us. They don't know the people that they're protecting, but they do it anyway. So hug a police officer with respect. Number 3, we played at Buffalo Run on Sunday, and they have done an outstanding job setting up the trailers, still with the clothes, still with the snacks. Yes, you can play 18 holes. 18 holes is available, and the course, I must say, is looking really spectacular. So please go out and play lots of rounds of golf at Buffalo Run because they've done a really, really fantastic job. So it's my PSA. And take a council member golfing. We love that.
Do we have anybody else who would like to make a report? Nope. Did you have an update on the upset at Suncor today, mostly because so many people saw it around the metro region, not to mention Commerce City?
No, ma'am.
Publicly, that you could say to people about what was observed and what you learned from Suncor?
No, ma'am.
You're not willing to say anything about?
I don't know if I can. I don't believe they have shared that I could share that the information that I have received.
That's all right. All right, I just wanted reassurance.
Hold on, ma'am.
All right.
From what I can share, the third party who provides power to to the refinery has taken accountability for the incident, and the work around that incident is still ongoing. That information has been shared with media outlets, so I am comfortable sharing that with you as I have just received it in real time.
That's great. Thank you very much. That's all I want. All right, everyone. I think that's the meeting. Meeting is adjourned. It is now 9:17, seeing no further business.